All right, it's the pre-show, everybody. Today is the pre-show for our SY0-601 Security Plus study group. So we will be starting in about 10 minutes. This is the pre-show where I look to see what's broken today, and I try to fix it before we go live. So far, so good. I think things are okay. If you can see me, if you can hear me, we seem to be doing something right. Hope everybody's doing well. Hello, chat room. I should probably grab the chat room, put it on my screen so I could actually see what people are doing. There they are. Hey, everybody. Everybody's already checking in. Everybody showed up. We got lots of great Security Plus content coming up in just a moment. Everything here looks good. I've got recordings going down here. Recordings look good here. Stream looks all right. We've got numbers that look pretty good. I'm adjusting this so I can look around. Look around. Okay, here we go. That all looks great. Hey, everybody. Hey, chat room. Hey, Tampa and Texas. And I got to scroll up. Look at all these folks who checked in early. Massachusetts is here, and Las Vegas, and Puerto Rico, and Canada is checked in. I'll let Mrs. Professor Messer know. That's important. Hello, Missouri. And Texas, and downtown Houston. Good to see you again, Jeff. Hey, Tampa again. I think I said Tampa twice, but that's okay, right? Hey, Malk, thanks for being here. Texas, a lot of Texas. Y'all checking in. Hey, Las Vegas. Hey, Virginia. Sierra Leone. There's Lauderdale. Some Florida folks checking in. Some Tallahassee, Florida folks checking in. Indiana, UK, Virginia, Orlando. Welcome. I was just in Orlando, enjoying the parks. Went to the Animal Kingdom. This would be the one at Disney, not the normal Animal Kingdom, whatever that is. Oh, we got lots to go through today. Lots of fun stuff. I've got all new questions. We got all Security Plus content. Lots to go through. More folks, lots of folks checking in. Antigua and Fairfax, Virginia, and Miami, and upstate New York, and Tampa again, and New York, and Atlanta, and Raleigh, North Carolina. There in the triangle. Good to have you here. We've got plenty to check out. Things seem to be operating as one would hope on here, so that's great. More Florida checking in. Lutz is here, up over there near the Tampa area. Hey, Boston and Kentucky and Kuwait and Round Rock, Texas, and more Canada, Nigeria, Bolivia, Nepal, Missouri, New York. There's a lot of people checking in for the live stream. This is great. Thanks so much for being here. I always say we couldn't do this without you. I guess we could, but it would be really, really bad. It would be me talking to myself. What did I choose? I chose the right answer again. That nobody wants that. So we'll try to make this all work out. More Orlando folks and Somalia and OKC in Oklahoma. The folks at the folks who are in the chat room, thank you for being here. Best, I think you mean attraction or attention at Disney's Animal Kingdom. You know, the Animal Kingdom is, it varies based on what's going on during the day. Is it really busy? Is it not really busy? But the must-dos is you have to go on the safari where you hop in the truck and they take you around to see the animals. That's great. And they have the walking tours where you can see all of the animals out in their amazing setup that they have there, where you can just walk along and see what's going on. It's just phenomenal. And we had a great time. So that's always good too. Let's see how we're doing. 6 minutes to go, rather. 5 3/4 minutes to go. We got stuff to do today. I got lots going on. There's plenty of things happening. Hello, Philly and Maryland and Atlanta and Queens and Salinas, California and Chicago and lots of folks checking in. Thanks for being here. Those of you that have just checked in, appreciate you joining us. Thanks for being here. And it's Don says, thanks, and thanks, Professor Messer. You helped me pass. I think you're the one who did the passing, but I was glad to help in whatever way we can. So congratulations on your pass. That's always good. Lake Lynn sitting outside Pearson View getting ready to take the SSCP. Well, that's fun. Man, you shotgunned it if you did Security Plus last month. You're just rolling right into the next one. Good for you. Best of luck with that exam. That's going to be a good one. It sounds like you're all ready. If you're able to roll through that one in a month, that's fantastic. What else we got here? I think we're in pretty good shape. I made these questions like 2 weeks ago, so I have to remember. Okay, lower thirds are working. How about this lower third? We can do this one from Douglas with the Super Chat, the $49.99 Super Chat, Douglas. Thank you so much. Coming right off the top rope. We sure appreciate your support. Thanks so much. You didn't even put anything in there. You didn't even put a comment or something interesting. But we sure appreciate the support. It's one of those things where we couldn't do this without all of you. So we appreciate that. Thank you for your support. And already there before we even get started. 4 minutes to go. 4 minutes to go. 4 minutes, Mr. Sinatra. And we'll get this thing on the road. We'll have to see how things go. We'll have to find out. Sharon says, let's see what Sharon says. Let's see if I can click things on my screen. Who says, would you recommend purchasing both your test questions and the Cert Master Practice? Well, the Cert Master Practice is certainly a good set of questions that you could study for your exam. I like to think that mine are a little more on point, on topic with the exam, but that's just me. And I think, but I still think the Cert Master are very good, or else I would not put them on my website. So that's why I think that they would work out just fine. And you'll notice that if you purchase the Cert Master Practice on my site, that it comes with my practice exams as well. It's bundled in there for free for less money than it would take to buy it directly on the CompTIA website. So that's pretty good. That's a pretty good deal, I think. So the bundling of those together might help a little bit. So if you liked my questions, but you like also an online system where you can point and click on things and have it tell you whether you got it right or not. Plus, they have an interesting design. You'll have to watch the video that I made for each one of those Security Plus Cert Master products. And the video shows how you step through it. And when you answer a question, it asks you, do you really know that for sure? Do you halfway know it? Or is that a complete guess? And then you can tell the test engine which one of those it is. Oh, no, I totally know it. And then it will grade it and say, this one is one you said you didn't know it, but you got it right anyway. Or it will tell you, you said you totally knew this and you got it wrong. So it gives you a different level of feedback, which I think is interesting. 2 minutes to go. And we'll step through all of these. Can I make one course on cloud security? That would be interesting. That would be a good one to do. No plans for cloud security at the moment. If I could get a certification on cloud security, I guess that would be more of a Microsoft or an AWS or something like that, and bundle in the security piece. I know that Cisco has some security things along those lines, which would be good. And then, of course, there's kind of the generic CISSP sort of security. It's not really cloud security, but I, of course, have my eyes looking at all of those, watching what's going on with that. Yeah, I think some AWS or some Azure type cloud courses would be a lot of fun, but haven't planned on any of those yet. So we'll figure it out. 1 minute to go, and we'll get this thing started. Let's check some cameras on my side. Those look pretty. Oh, laptop went to screensaver. That won't work for anybody. Very, very nice. Okay, I think we're in pretty good shape. We'll have to find out. Yes, if you get one of those weird questions from YouTube that says, this video is unavailable with restricted mode enabled. To view this video, you will need to disable restricted mode, which means you're either watching the video at a facility that has integrated YouTube's restricted mode, or if you're at home, that means YouTube's kind of messed up right now. Just check back later. And it will eventually figure it out. All right. With that, yeah, it happens all the time. Happens all the time. Okay. I think with that, we're ready to do a live stream. This should be pretty good. Let's get things started. Hello, everyone. Welcome to the February 2023 Professor Messer SY0-601 Security Plus Study Group. Thanks for joining us. This is our live stream where I ask you questions that come directly from the Security Plus exam objectives. And you, if you are here live and online, you can participate with us by answering questions as we go. I'll tell you in a moment how you can join us online to do that. In fact, now's a good time to step through that since we're all here. One of the things you can do is pop open a new browser window and go to the URL that's right there, professormesser.com/QA. That's one place you can go. The other place you can go is to an app. There, of course, is an app for this. The mobile app available is called the Socrative Student app. So feel free to grab that app as well. You will see that app will ask you for a room name. The room name for that app is Professor Messer, all one word, PROFESSORMESSER. Make sure you spell it right, or you won't be able to see any apps there, any room there. There's no question waiting for you. You'll be the only one there, and there'll be no question. So make sure you spell it right. If you see that, back out of it, put in a new room name. Make sure the room name is spelled Professor Messer, same way that it is on the website. Either way, you're looking at the same questions. So if you do either one of those things, there will be a question waiting for you. This first question that I have is one from last month. So I like to give you a rewind question to see how well you remember things from last month. And then perhaps even more interestingly, how did we do from last month? So we'll see how we go here. The question this month is, what type of computing manages some data locally instead of processing all data on a cloud service? Is that SaaS, fog computing, hashing, load balancing, or IoT? If you think you know the answer, you follow this link that's on your screen. Our rule here is that you don't answer in the chat room. Please don't answer online. Please don't give any hints in the chat room. Instead, you go to this link online to answer, which is the one on your screen, professormesser.com/QA. Question again is, which type of computing manages some data locally instead of processing all data on a cloud service? Is that SaaS, fog computing, hashing, load balancing, or IoT? It's got to be one of those, right? So feel free to fill that in. While you're working on that question, I want to, of course, thank you for being here. We aren't able to do these without your participation. So having you in the live stream and participating with us is so helpful. Thank you so much. This would also be a good place to thank Andrew with the $50 super chat. Andrew says, "Hi, Professor. Wanted to thank you for everything. Used your 1002 materials in early 2021 to get A+ certified and my first IT job, and now used your Network Plus and Security Plus to get those in the last month. Wouldn't be where I am without you." What a great story. Thank you, Andrew, for letting us know your story and where you started and where you're going with this. There is a reason we do these courses. There is a path that can get you a job or get you a better job in IT. And there's lots of things you can do to make that happen. Andrew, you worked hard to get to where you are. Congratulations. And thank you also for the super chat. If you are someone who is starting this path just like Andrew, and you're thinking, how can I do what he did? You simply need to go to the Professor Messer website. We have so much there that can help you. First, we've got our YouTube channel at professormesser.com/YouTube with all of our videos. Every single one of our videos and our video courses is available for you to watch free online. There's no registration. There's no paywall. There's nothing that's hiding in the back. Everything is there and available in my YouTube page. And I've got YouTube playlists, and I've got index on professormesser.com. You can't go wrong. There's also a weekly pop quiz question for Security Plus available on Twitter at professormesser.com/Twitter and professormesser.com/Instagram. So you got a few things that you can go to get even more information to help you with your studies. Eventually, you're going to find that you'll need to take the exam. The exam today is the SY0-601. This is a version of the Security Plus exam that was released on November the 12th of 2020. We estimate the retirement for that exam to be somewhere around May of 2024. That particular date may change a bit as we get closer, but you can tell as we sit here in February of 2023 2023, that's more than a year away. So if you're someone who's studying for the SY0-601 and you're nowhere close to the spring of 2024, then you're in fine shape. Keep studying, keep taking that exam. That is the latest version. That's the one you should be taking. There's one exam you have to take, one exam you have to pass to earn your Security Plus. That exam is 90 minutes long. It's a maximum of 90 questions. You might get fewer than 90 questions. Your passing score on a scale from 100 to 900 is 750. So an odds numbering system, granted. So one of the things that I always tell people is don't worry about the numbering system. Don't worry about how things are graded. They don't tell you how it's graded anyway. You have no input or feedback or ability to see how your exam was graded, so it really doesn't matter. Even though they tell you your passing score is 750 on a scale from 100 to 900, you never know what you make until you hit that submit button at the end, and it tells you what your final score happens to be. When you're taking the exam, a lot of the exam will be multiple choice questions, very similar to the one you just saw. But there are a handful of questions at the beginning of the exam that are not multiple choice. Those are performance-based questions, and we'll do a performance-based question at the very beginning of this session today. Don't forget that on my site, we even take things to the next level by offering course notes, practice exams, offline and downloadable videos, so much more that you can find in our Success Bundle. If you'd like to see what all of that is about, find it on our website. Go to ProfessorMesser.com/601SB. 601 Success Bundle is what that stands for. Or just simply follow the links in the menus on the top of the Professor Messer website. I also have a replay of this live stream available in a podcast format. You can subscribe to this with your podcast listening program by visiting this link, ProfessorMesser.com/podcast. I have podcast links there for my A+, Network Plus, and Security Plus study groups. And this one will be also added to that list as soon as we are done today. There's also a video replay available on YouTube. That video replay is something that's automatically posted as soon as we're done here, takes a few minutes to process, and then immediately is available on the website. On YouTube. It'll automatically be added to the list that's on YouTube as well. This study group list gives you all of the videos, but if you wait about a day or so, sometimes even faster, my marketing manager, Lori, who's watching this, hey, Lori, how are things going? Good. Me too. We should probably talk in person. We always text back and forth. It's so efficient. We probably should talk at some point and just say hi, just to hear each other's voice. I love modern technology, so this all works out perfectly. Lori listens to this whole thing when we're done and puts timestamps in. So you can go back to any of our videos and look at the timestamps that she's added to this list, and you can see those timestamps can help you find exactly what you are looking for when you step through this. So feel free to have a look. They're all on YouTube at ProfessorMesser.com/YouTube. And thank you, chat room, for thanking Lori for her help with those replays as well. Also want to mention that when we're not here doing a live stream, we're always in our Discord chatting. Some folks have video and audio sessions that they will get together and study together online virtually. We have a great community in our Discord. Simply go to ProfessorMesser.com/Discord and you can join us there as well. There's usually myself and many other folks are hanging out there. Sometimes you can catch an ad hoc study session with everybody. Maybe you have a question about a particular topic. You can throw that into one of the chat rooms that are there. We've got an event schedule. There's lots to see. Follow us on Discord, ProfessorMesser.com/Discord. At some point, you'll need to take this exam, right? Well, you could certainly go to the CompTIA website and purchase the exam at full price. But why would you do that when a discounted version is already available on the ProfessorMesser.com website? Simply go to ProfessorMesser.com/vouchers if you live in the U.S. or Canada and some U.S. territories, and you can purchase and purchase and get an email with your voucher key. It's so simple. So go to ProfessorMesser.com/vouchers to get that voucher. You don't need a coupon code. You don't need an extension in your browser. It's simply discounted on our website automatically. And if you purchase from my site, I even sweeten the pot just a little bit. I give you a free copy of my CompTIA exam hacks. This is a list of exam hacks that I've created through the years because I've taken so many different certification exams, some ideas and things you can use to help study, and perhaps even more importantly, some strategies you can implement during the exam that might give you a couple of extra points. Sometimes that's the difference between passing and failing an exam. So you can get that set of exam hacks for free if you buy the voucher on my site. The only place to get those that exam hacks is either by buying a voucher or getting my success bundle. It's not available to purchase separately. So that is at my website, professormesser.com/vouchers. Now, let's go back to that question we asked earlier, which asked, which type of computing manages some data locally instead of processing all data on a cloud service? Is that SaaS, fog computing, hashing, load balancing, or IoT? Let's see how you asked for this. 59% of you say that's fog computing. We've got 13% of you that say that is load balancing. We've got 17% that said it's SaaS. We got 7% that said IoT, and then 4% said hashing. We didn't do very well last month with this question, so it's great to see that 60% of you say that's cloud computing, or that's fog computing is what we can do with that. We could take some of the data that we might have collected locally, put some of that data into kind of a middle ground where you can do some processing of usually large amounts of data, and you don't have to send everything back out to the cloud. This allows you to balance properly CPU, networking, and ultimately the information that you need from this computing infrastructure. We commonly see this with things like automobiles. It's a really good example. You have so many different sensors in a modern automobile. Just take the sensor that is measuring wheel rotation and how the wheels are doing on the ground. Whether it's wet or whether it's dry. They're calculating if there's any slippage. They can tell you a lot of information, and they're checking those things a number of different times a second, sometimes up to hundreds or thousands of times per second. Well, you wouldn't want to send thousands of data points every second into the cloud. What will we do with that data anyway? But it might be useful to roll that up to a server that can give you some feedback about your braking system. And that might be that middle part is not in the clouds and it's not on the ground, so we say that it's in the fog. Now, I don't know if that's really a great way to describe it, because that tends to me think that you can't see anything, but that's not the case. The reality is you get to see quite a bit using fog computing. It's really just describing this middle ground between you and a centralized cloud-based infrastructure up at the top. That is indeed fog computing. Folks did great with this one. 62% of you answered fog computing, which I will tell you is way up from last month. So congratulations. Thank you for that. Well done. I appreciate the thought that you were able to either remember that from last month, or maybe you did a little studying and got a little bit better with those. Let's do some new questions, though. I have a performance-based question for you. Before we get to that performance-based question, I want to thank John in the chat room with the $19.99 super chat, who says, thanks so much, Professor. Passed Security Plus 2 days ago with no prior experience, largely thanks to you. Cheers. I would say largely thanks to you. You're the one that had to study it. You're the one that had to go take the exam. But I'm glad that we were able to help in some way. Congratulations on your Security Plus, and thank you so much for the super chat as well. We had another super chat come through from Church Grim for $10 and says, thanks for the timestamps, Lori. That's a Lori super chat. So that's one that she works very hard to make sure that all of those timestamps are correct. They're up to date. They're done very, very quickly, so you have access to them almost immediately. And it's really worked out for a lot of folks. I get great feedback on the timestamps. So thank you, Church Grim, for the $10 super chat and the telling us that we are doing the right thing with those, that the timestamps do help. So we sure appreciate that. Let's do a performance-based question. I have one that I wrote for you. This performance-based question of the month is more of a visual question. So if you're listening in the podcast, this question is not going to be so great. I would recommend you go look at the video if you get to a point where you can see this. Our performance-based question of the month deals with this image here. I should probably take this image that I've got And I should remove my head so you can actually see this. So I'm going to go away. There we go. And the question is right there at the top, and it asks you to create 2 firewall rules. It says create a firewall rule that would allow encrypted browser communication from the management server to the web server and explicitly block all traffic from the database server to the file server. So we do need to create a series of rules here based around those particular criteria. And you can see on the screen, I have 2 different networks. I have a DMZ, and in that DMZ, I have a web server, a video server, or a file server. I guess I should rename that with the newer terms. This is now a screened subnet with a web server, video server, and file server. And then we also have an internal network that has information on it as well. That the internal network has a database server, a management server, and a storage server. So there are a number of different services that you can pull from. And you can see right in the middle is a firewall. So the only way you can get data from one side to the other is to have a firewall rule that will either allow or block that data from going through. As you may recall from the videos that we did with firewalls, that this is one where the firewall itself is something that will implicitly block everything. So if you don't put any rules in the firewall, nothing goes through the firewall. That's pretty much every modern firewall you will ever run into. Not even pretty much. That is every modern firewall that you will run into has this set up. So make sure you're familiar with this. This is a question that I created myself. A number of you in the chat room are saying, I think I may have seen something like this in a previous exam I took. Well, it may have been like this, but it wasn't this one because I wrote this question. I created these graphics. These are mine. So you didn't see this on your exam because I created it myself. And we'll have to step through each one of these. But that's great feedback because the topics we cover in our live streams and in our practice exams are some that will, of course, give you a perspective of what types of questions you might get on the exam. So indeed, I do have a number of videos that can help you understand this. There's the link that's on your screen to answer this question. Please no answers in the chat room. You want to go to professormesser.com/QA to lock in that answer. Let's see if you can figure these out. And you'll notice some people in the chat room are saying, wait, I thought the exam was all multiple choice. Oh no, the first set of questions you get on the exam will not be multiple choice. They will be performance-based questions. They could be fill in the blank. They could be drag and drop. They could be making a firewall rule. We just never know what we might get on the exam. But it's good to hear that we are giving you the topics that really do apply to practical things you need to know for these exams. So that's pretty good. This might help as you step through all of these. So this one says, again, create firewall rules that would allow encrypted browser communication from the management server to the web server and explicitly block all traffic from the database server to the file server. And we'll talk in a moment why you would do something like this for both of these rules. Why would you create a rule for these? This is one of the biggest challenges for a firewall administrator is figuring out where traffic is coming from, where traffic is going to, and then what that traffic happens to be. And this is admittedly a bit of an outdated style of firewall rule base because we're dealing with source IP, destination IP, protocol port number, and whether you're allowing or blocking. These days, of course, there would be another column in the firewall for application because many of the firewalls today are next generation firewalls. They can see what type of traffic is going through the network, determine what that traffic happens to be, and then either allow it or disallow it based on what the name of the application is. So if you wanted to allow Microsoft SQL Server, you make a rule that says allow SQL Server. You don't have to know a port number. You don't have to know a protocol. It's like magic. And it's technology that works remarkably well, but it doesn't have to deal with or work with any port numbers necessarily. If we wanted to take it a little bit further and give a little more data in there, we could even add additional port numbers to it. If we wanted to lock it down to specific port numbers, we can still do that. And most firewalls will allow you to create port-based rules as well, even if it is a next generation firewall. I see a number of you have locked in your answers. I'm going to give it another moment or two to let you put what those answers might be. This is more of a fill in the blank, obviously. There was no good way to do a drag and drop on the screen. But if you are on your exam, it could be a drag and drop, or they might just ask you to fill in the blanks. I have a feeling a lot of the things on the exam, instead of being fill in the blank, tend to be a pull down menu. So each one of these might have a pull down option on it, and you would pull it down to get a list of things that you could possibly choose from. Again, something that I don't have the ability to do as we are working with this particular front end. So you would have a pull down here for source IP, a pull down for destination, a pull down for protocol, a pull down for port number, and then a pull down for allow or block. So you never know exactly what you might run into, but that can give you an idea. But this would, of course, make you at least have a feel for the types of questions that you might get on the exam and things that you should be aware of and can expect when you start sitting down for the exam. That's why I think you don't commonly see fill in the blank on CompTIA exams. That's probably why. It's so much easier to grade and make sure that someone had the right answer if you have a drag and drop or something you can select from a pull down. But this one is fill in the blank. We're going to be a little bit harder than the actual exam. Let's step through how you would have figured this out. So let's do this. Let's go to this rule. Again, the question asks to create a firewall rule or firewall rules that would allow encrypted browser communication from the management server to the web server and explicitly block all traffic from the database server to the file server. So let's do this. Let's go through this and get a feel for what this would be. Let's start with the first rule that we need to make, which would be to allow encrypted browser communication. I guess that would be HTTPS, SSL, or TLS type traffic from the management server to the web server. So let's just start with those. First, we have to find the management server, and we can find that management server on the right side. Here's our first rule, and it's going from the management server to the web server. And you can see, of course, that's going straight through the firewall. So now that we've created the line on our screen, this should be a little bit easier to break down what the answer might be. So we need to start with the first option on the firewall rule is, or first tuple, as you can sometimes hear it referred to as the source IP. So the management server source IP is 10.2.1.47. So we'll add that to the source IP for this first rule. Now, where's the traffic going? It is going to the web server, which is 10.1.1.2. So we'll put that in as the destination IP address. Now, right here, you may be wondering, okay, that gets going one direction. What about the other direction? Well, most firewalls these days that you'll run into are firewalls that understand the state of the traffic that is traversing the firewall. And if that management server initiates a session, sends that first packet out to the DMZ switch and finally to the web server, and it passes through the firewall recognizes that a communication has been started and already understands there's going to be some communication on the way back as well. We will automatically accept traffic on the way back as long as we know that that traffic has cleared a firewall rule on the way out. Makes it very easy to create firewall rules. Otherwise, you'd have to duplicate every single firewall rule that's in the firewall, except for maybe certain corner cases. It's so much easier to have a state-based, a stateful firewall to be able to understand that. So now let's go to the second part of this rule, which says we need to allow encrypted browser communication. That's going to be, if we look back to our Network Plus days, and this is probably something you know anyway, is that HTTPS traffic is usually transported over TLS, what we often just call SSL, although technically these days it's not SSL anymore, it really is TLS, uses TCP port 443. So those are the next two fields that are in the firewall rule. We're going to go TCP, and we're going to use port 443. And then lastly, we want to allow that communication. So we're going to tell this firewall rule that the disposition for this particular traffic flow will be to allow that traffic flow. And then obviously, since we are state-based, make sure we allow that traffic on the way back as well. That is our first rule. Not so bad. That was easy. That's one. Once you break it down, you draw the line, you figure out where the source and the destination are. I guess the hardest part of that one was remembering what is encrypted web communication? What are the port numbers for that one? You probably won't get a lot of port numbers on your exam. Port numbers aren't even listed in the Security Plus exam objectives. So it's not something you should have to dwell on. You probably remember that one from the Network Plus days anyway. Now the second part of the question, which is explicitly block traffic from the database server to the file server. So we need a different line on our screen. First, we need to find the database server. It's up here, and we're going to talk to the file server, which is down here. So let's draw a line there so we can sort of watch this as we're going through. And next on our list, database server to file server is one that we need to explicitly block all traffic. So here, we don't have to worry about port numbers. Let's start with the very first tuple on here, which is a source IP. Since we're starting at the database server, our source IP is going to be 10.2.1.20. The traffic goes through the firewall and to the destination file server at 10.1.1.3. Now, since we are using this as and saying that it is all traffic, this would be, in a firewall world, we refer to a wildcard that covers anything as either any, although some firewalls may use an asterisk for that as well. You could use either one. I'll accept anything on here that's any to any. Sometimes some firewalls back in the old days, you have to put a range of port numbers. So you'd put TCP 0 through 65.535 and UDP 0 through 65.535, which is sort of redundant. And all you could do is just put any, makes it easy. And of course, the disposition for this firewall is that you want to block all traffic. So the disposition, instead of allow, is going to be block. So that is how this rule should look, which is 10.2.1.20 to 10.1.1.3. We're going to block any port number with any protocol, and you're in good shape there. So those are the two rules that would allow you to follow those particular directions or instructions on this view. So on your firewall, you probably will have a pull down that has an asterisk or has the word any, and that's how you would probably take that rule and be able to implement it on a practical exam and being able to work through those. So that should help with firewall rules. That's what you would do. So you don't need anything extra. There was a question in the chat room about Rule 1 requiring a subsequent deny all rule to be effective. That's not the case, as we can see. We just need one that allows it to start the communication, and then it will automatically allow that communication in the other direction. Rule 2 is an exception to an implicit allow rule. I think you meant implicit deny rule there, but same thing applies. And let's talk about that. It's a really good point. So let's talk about that in a moment. This one is, as we get through this, this is one at the bottom that we're doing in any block. And if you know anything about firewalls, you'll know that every modern firewall has an implicit block already listed at the bottom. We technically did not need rule number 2 to be able to block that traffic because it was already blocked. Now, this happens all the time when working with firewalls, is that even though the traffic is indeed already blocked implicitly by simply not having an allow rule, one of the things that you sometimes would like to see as a security administrator is how many people tried to communicate from the database server to the file server, because that's something we don't want to have happen. We're interested in logging that so that maybe at the end of the week, we can create a list of everyone that tried to communicate between those two devices and find out why they were trying to communicate between those two devices, because that might tell us that perhaps someone was trying to circumvent security or perhaps try to access a server they should not be accessing. So the only way to do that is to create a rule in the firewall, because firewalls are not going to log anything unless it's in the rule base. So the only way to have an ongoing log that will catch that is to create a deny rule so that you'll have something to log. Generally, all implicit denies are simply dropped in the firewall and they're never logged anywhere. And in fact, if you have a firewall at work, you may find that a very meticulous security administrator might go all the way to the bottom of the firewall rule base and put a firewall rule that says any to any IP address with any to any port and protocol deny. And what they're effectively doing is logging everything. So if it doesn't match any of the previous rules to allow through the firewall and we're dropping it, I want to log all the drops as well. So those denies are actually very valuable, even though it was implicitly denied by creating the explicit command to deny that traffic. We're now creating a log entry. So it becomes really useful. So if you're trying to log and you're trying to prove to somebody, I think there might be somebody inside of our network trying to access this device from another device, let's create a log here so we can track that over time and see if that's really the case. Very, very useful. In fact, if you go to very high security environments, they will very often have an explicit deny so they can log everything at the bottom. So useful. So even though this is and somebody in the chat room already mentioned this is a graphical type question. There's a lot of icons on the screen. There's a lot of networking that's happening here. There's a firewall in the middle that's literally on fire, which hopefully is not your firewall. That at the end of it, this is a relatively simple thing to match up and be able to create a rule in the firewall to make that happen. So that would have been very, very useful. Now, you could have done other things with this. This particular question asked for specific inclusions and specific exclusions. And if I was going to answer this question, I think those are the two rules that fit our request perfectly. One of the things you don't want to do on a firewall is to open more things than you should. So that's what is really, really useful for this particular one. And that's why this particular question gave you specific examples on what type of traffic and specific examples on what type of traffic not only to allow, but what to block. And so we have to make sure our rules match all of those. Pretty important. If you're someone who's doing firewalls and managing a firewall database, that's exactly the type of thing you need to know. And as a former firewall engineer, I love these types of questions. They make you think about where traffic is coming from and where it's going to, and have you think about what you should be logging so that later on you can create some great reports from that. Before we go to our next multiple choice-based question, I want to thank MPK in the chat room who says, $25 super chat. You guys are coming off the top rope today. Thank you so much. MP says, truly appreciate the great resources from Professor Messer. Passed the Security Plus in August. My goal was to come back to say thank you and show support. We're thank you back to you. And we appreciate the support as well, always making that happen. So that is so nice to hear. Congratulations on your Security Plus. It's nice to have that in your pocket. And then thanks for coming back and just saying thanks. That's all we need. To put the super chat on top of it is just a bonus. That's gravy. That's a little bit of extra icing on the cake for us. So thank you so much for that too. We appreciate your support. Hopefully you guys did pretty well with this firewall. Let's shift gears a little bit now and go back to multiple choice-based questions. This is the style and type that you might get on your exam. So this multiple choice-based question asks, a company has added a 24-hour security guard to process guests at the main entrance of their building. Which security control would describe this scenario? Would it be one of these? Would it be preventive, compensating, detective, technical, or corrective? A company has added a 24-hour security guard to process guests at the main entrance of their building. Which security control would describe this scenario? Would it be preventive, compensating, detective, technical, or corrective? You think you know the answer? Please don't answer in the chat room. You want to follow the link that's on your screen, professormesser.com/QA, and lock in your answer. Maybe you happen to know what this one is. Have a list at the different security controls in that list. We will figure out what these happen to be. So this is really a challenge if you start getting into the Security Plus exam. Is there are a lot of different categorizations of topics like this that you have to remember. So security controls is an important one to remember. You'll probably get a question on the exam, at least one, on security controls. You certainly could. I tend to see a lot of security control questions in different ways. This one's relatively straightforward, so you kind of have to know what the security controls are, how you would put them into this list. So this is, have a look at this scenario, see if you can decide what you think it is. A lot of people have already answered this one, so I tend to think we did pretty well. But we'll see. Sometimes I get fooled a little bit as we step through this. Becomes a challenge to do that. Let me see a couple of other things on this list. So let's now go to the answer. Let's see how well you did with this one. This question again asks, a company has added a 24-hour security guard to process guests at the main entrance of their building. Which security control would describe this scenario? Is it preventive, compensating, detective, technical, or corrective? What did you choose? Let's find out. We'll show the results. 88% of you say that it is preventive. That is a pretty strong answer. When I saw the numbers go up really, really fast, I thought, okay, that tends to lend it to someone knowing the answer to this one. Only all the others, by the way, single digits. So 7% for detective, 2% for corrective, 2% for compensating, and 1% for technical, which is effectively a three-way tie for third place. So the control type, obviously, for preventive is what we were looking for. In this case, we've got a security guard. They're at the front desk. They're watching everyone come in the door. There are locked doors behind them. Nobody gets through this room unless they talk to the security guard and check in. This is a very common scenario at most organizations. In fact, I spent a lot of my career going from one organization to another. And when I would do that, we would certainly run into some organizations that had a lot of security. And there would be a security guard there, and we'd check in, and we'd get a badge, and it would say visitor, and there was a normal process. So much that when we would go to an environment where there was no guard and no one at a front door, sometimes there would just be a phone, and you would call the person with their extension and say, hey, we're here, and they just open up the door and say, okay, come on in. And we'd walk into a room with hundreds of people, but there was no security at all to allow someone in. Now, I don't think I'm especially adept at hacking networks. That's certainly not my forte, nor would I ever pretend to be part of a pen testing team. But I know enough to be dangerous, certainly. So I'm not the kind of person you would simply want to walk into your facility and sit down at one of your desks with all of these network connections available. Just not a good idea. Now, I never put myself in a position where I even pulled out equipment that they would even see that I was doing anything that might be incorrect or something I should not be doing. But it certainly makes me think that I wonder if that's the real case. So that's really an important one to kind of sit through as we go through these ideas and questions. Security guard certainly is a preventive control because they would prevent you from gaining access to the rest of the facility. It would not be one of the other controls like detective controls and other types because there are certainly things like motion detectors or intrusion detection systems that can detect traffic. But in this particular case, this is one where I think if you're ever in a situation where you are trying to determine what the right response would be with a guard that's there, well, they're there to prevent you from coming in. Therefore, they are a preventive control. And indeed, 88% of you knew that. Myself, every month, these are all brand new questions. That's the reason you're not able to find them on the internet. That's why I tell you, don't bother Googling. It's not going to help you very much. These questions are specifically designed for this study group, and they are specifically designed. You'll never see them again on another study group because that's one of the ways that this works out. Yeah, we did a little dip in the matrix there, but we're back. Everything looks fine on this side. You never know with these the local ISPs how things are going. Just refresh your screen, and you should be good. So that's one of those I think that we can get through. Thankfully, that one was just a quick in and out, and we'll see how that happens. That was very fast. You can't see it on this list. Let me put this up on this side. You can kind of see the dip. For those of you that like to watch the study groups, that's where we went down. It was just for a moment, and we were back again. So we're back in good shape. I think we're in pretty good. Yeah, it was your local Wi-Fi. It really wasn't. It was definitely a connection here. So hopefully they can get you the things you'd like. Let's do another question. I've got more here. This is a very straightforward question that asks, which of the following would best describe an OTDOS? This is one, if I start looking at the different abbreviations and options and acronyms and 3 letters and 4 letters and 5 letters that we have to memorize on this exam, it can drive you crazy. So this is a real thing. So which of the following would best describe an OTDOS? Is it A, power system failure? Let's see if I can get it over here. There we go. Power system failure, web server kernel fault, L2 network loop, email server buffer overflow, or DNS server outage. So there are 5 different options here. The question again is, which of the following would best describe an OTDOS? Those are 2 different abbreviations. An OT, DOS. Put it that way. Is it a power system failure, a web server kernel fault, an L2 network loop, an email server buffer overflow, or a DNS server outage? It's got to be one of those, right? See how we're doing. Go to the link that's on your screen to answer this question, professormesser.com/QA, and lock in your question there. Let's see how we're doing. We're not quite the number of people going through and locking in their question on this one. I think it was one too many acronyms. One too many abbreviations. If I had to describe the Security Plus exam, I would describe it as one too many acronyms. That certainly tends to be the case these days. The number of acronyms on Security Plus are a lot. But if you ever get into trying to understand the details of this exam, you should go look at Network Plus, which has even more acronyms, if that's possible. And the Security Plus exam is much larger in scope than what we're doing with the Security Plus exam. But Network Plus is still lots of acronyms that are in there. Those of you that are trying to figure it out, the whole point of this is that I'm not going to tell you what these acronyms are. You need to be very clear on what these are. Please no hints in the chat room. Please no answers in the chat room. If you don't know what these are, just take a guess. If you don't understand the acronym, you don't understand what it happens to be, take a guess at it to lock in the answer. That is something that's pretty important when you're going through here to really get an understanding of what might be there. So absolutely get familiar with those acronyms. It might help you quite a bit. Let's see how you did with this one. The question asked, which of the following would best describe an OTDOS? What would that be? Would it be a power system failure, a web server kernel fault, an L2 network loop, an email server buffer overflow, or a DNS server outage? It's got to be one of those. I guess the first thing we should do is see how you did with this answer, and then we can answer the question that many of you have, which is, what in the world are you talking about? You can see that we are split on this one, not knowing what some of these acronyms might be. This is pretty much what you might expect. You can see that 31% of you say a power system failure, 29% say a DNS server outage, so basically a two-way tie for first place. Then we have effectively a two-way tie for second place. 18% of you say an email server buffer overflow, 14% of you say an L2 network loop. Those layer 2 network loops, again, always bringing down the network. And then 7% of you say it's a web server kernel fault. Well, in this case, what we really want to do is understand what this term is, an OT, denial of service. The OT in this particular case stands for operational technology. That is the technical term for technology that is used most of the time in a large-scale operational capacity, usually in electric grid, traffic control, manufacturing. So anything that has lots of industrial use, you will often see that referred to as an operational technology. So this is one where we aren't talking about a web server not working anymore. We're talking about losing traffic lights in an entire city, or maybe in a single intersection, or maybe a device that's on the manufacturing floor, a machine, is no longer working properly because we're having some type of issue, a security issue, with the technology that that device uses, that operational technology, to make that happen. So this is a little bit different than just saying, can I ping the server scenario. We need to, of course, have all of this technology protected a little bit differently than we would protect a web server, a database server, some type of middleware, or even a laptop or a mobile phone. This is technology that has much more importance, that affects many more people. And when this technology fails, in some cases, it could be life-threatening. So you can obviously see there are important security connotations to protecting operational technology and how it can be used. So in this case, we should look at our list again to see what this OT might apply to. And you can see that a DNS server outage, DNS servers are not an operational technology. That's not a power system or a piece of technology on the floor of a manufacturing facility. An email server buffer overflow, although that would make me cry a little bit, that's not operational technology. A layer 2 network loop, I've created plenty of those in my lifetime, but this would not be something specific to operational technology. That's just specific or really generalized to networking. A web server kernel fault would not be operational technology, but a power system failure. Power systems, obviously, that would fit into that category of operational technology. This is one, we're even seeing this where there have been attacks on our power grid most recently in the most recent months here in the United States. And those attacks on the power grid and proposed attacks on the power grid are attacks, they're denial of service with operational technology. And in some cases, they're using a rifle to take out power systems. That's something we all need to be worried about and concerned of, and we have to think differently now about how we protect these systems going forward. Very important to know, very important to think about, very important from a security perspective. And in this case, although it's not the majority, the plurality of you, 33%, a third of you say, yeah, it's power system failure, which in this particular case with this topic that is very new to the Security Plus, this is new on the 601 exam, that this is indeed an important thing to know about. So make sure you're familiar with this particular acronym, but now you know it. Now, if anything on your exam comes up that talks about operational technology or OT, you'll know exactly what that is referring to. This is kind of the challenge with Security Plus, is that there is a lot that you have to know on Security Plus. There's plenty on this exam. And my set of course notes for Security Plus is the biggest set of course notes that I've created for any course I've ever done. That should give you an idea just the scope that you will run into on this exam. And it makes sense, I guess. The entire set of videos for Security Plus is 177 videos. Oh, and I remember every one. And over 21 hours of information. And when you consider that it takes me probably 8 hours for every video, 6 to 8 hours just to produce a single video, it took a lot of time to create them. But not everybody has time to go through every single video and grab every morsel of information. So one of the things that I did is I created a set of course notes that has already done this for you. I go through every video. We'll get past the table of contents and the introduction. So every video, I have documented all of the text, all of the important graphics, all of the important tables, and everything else that you would need to know that comes from that video. Now, this obviously doesn't replace you watching the videos. It doesn't replace you reading your book or doing hands-on or working through your practice exams, but it is a great way to consolidate everything into one single guide. And although I don't have the physical version of this to show you right now, but there is also a physical version. So if you like the PDF version, but you would also like a physical version of the notes, you can choose to get the physical edition as well. And if you buy the physical edition, you get the digital edition PDF for free. You can learn more about this and how we can bundle these together. If you buy it with the practice exams, for example, there's a little bit of a price break. That's all on my website. You can learn more about that at professormesser.com/601CN. We will come back to doing more of those in just a moment. Let's get some more questions in. I've been talking a lot on this one, so we're going to see if we can get a couple more questions in here. This next question is about multi-factor authentication. The question asks, which of the following multi-factor authentication attributes would be associated with signing for a package delivery? Would that be somewhere you are, someone you know, something you can do, cloud authentication, or something you exhibit. So the question again is, which of the following multi-factor authentication attributes would be associated with signing for a package delivery? Would that be somewhere you are, someone you know, something you can do, cloud authentication, or something you exhibit? If you think you know the answer, use that link on your screen. Go to professormester.com/QA. Please no answers in the chat room. Please no hints in the chat room. We will go through this list and see what you think the answer is. A lot of people already locking in their answers on this one. Makes me think they might know what this is. You'll notice on the 601 exam that multi-factor authentication, the factors themselves and the attributes are different. So we also now not only have to understand what those are, we have to also make sure we maintain that separation on these. So see if you can get your answer locked in on this one. All of these, by the way, are real authentication methods. We just need to figure out which one makes sense for this one. So that might help you as you're going through this. See if that's something that might work. Let's see let's see how you did with this one. So this question again asked, which of the following multi-factor authentication attributes would be associated with signing for a package delivery, which is something you may have to do for authentication? Is that somewhere you are, someone you know, something you can do, cloud authentication, or something you exhibit? I think this one can sort of go a couple of different ways, but there's really one that is the best answer for this one. Let's see how you answered this first. Let's show the results. 62% of you say that is something you can do. 19% say somewhere you are. I think those are going to be the two that we get to fight about over what these might be. 12% say something you exhibit. 4% said someone you know, and 3% say cloud authentication. Now, in this particular case, we don't know anything more about this scenario other than we are signing for package delivery. That's it. There's nothing else in this question that would lead us to believe that any other type of data was collected during this package delivery, even though we know in the real world, when working with UPS and FedEx and your U.S. Postal Service or your local postal service, that very often there are other things stored when this type of authentication happens. But the question was very specific that said which attribute would be associated with signing for a package delivery. And in this particular case, when you sign something, that is something you can do. Your signature is relatively unique, and it's something that you do that other people can't do, or certainly can't do very well. Of course, there are people that would like to pretend to do your signature, or maybe they try to duplicate your signature, but the reality is you're the one who really knows how your own handwriting works. And it's very common for you to have the same handwriting, the same signature every single time. So one of the attributes from multi-factor authentication is we can look at a signature that you did last week. We can have you sign for a package today, and then we can compare those two. Now, this may not be exactly the best scenario for this. The actual authentication for this particular scenario happens later. It happens when somebody says, wait, who signed for this? And they can look at the signature and they can compare it to what they know a good signature to be. And that's the authentication. So it doesn't necessarily even happen. I've noticed, in fact, that a lot of the deliveries that are occurring that require signature now are also requiring some type of ID. So it's even going further down the road when we're working with those. So hopefully that's one that can help you if you're, of course, trying to figure out what type of attribute is associated with signing. It is something you can do. And in fact, 62% of you said, yes, that is something you can do, and being able to work through this. So hopefully that's something that you can do if you get an answer or a package that they need you to verify that's you. You're going to be signing your name, and that is something you can do. Now, if this said you have to show an ID for package delivery, or they are logging GPS coordinates when they deliver the package, those are also great multi-factor authentication attributes, but those aren't the ones we asked for in this question. In fact, a lot of people don't realize when you have a package delivered by the U.S. Postal Service, there's a GPS they log in there along with it. They say, oh, we left it at the door. Here are the GPS coordinates. We left it out. And very often I have called the post office and said, I got a message that it had been delivered. I got the text message from you, but it's not here. And they say, oh, hold on. We left it 2 doors down at your neighbor's house. Because they have the GPS coordinates, they can see on their map, oh, you're right, we didn't leave it at your house. We left it, instead of leaving it at door number 7, we left it at door number 1 because the 7 wasn't written well on the law, or whatever the problem is. And so I, of course, get out of my chair and I walk to my neighbor's house and say, hi, I had a package delivered here. And they go, oh, yeah, here it is. So sometimes that last mile of delivery is what I get to do and make that happen. But this is one where, in this case, we specifically asked about signing. Now, if you're someone who is watching this video for continuing education unit credit, I would love to give you an email that certifies that you watched this for a 1-hour webinar category CEU. The way that you can earn that CEU is to go to the top or the bottom of the Professor Messer website, click the Contact Us link. In that Contact Us link, put your name, put your email address, put your in the subject line, put that this is the February 2023 Security Plus. That's all you have to put in there, and that's all I need to know. And then in the body of the message, on a line by itself, with no other text and no other sentences and no other extra words, on the line by itself, put the super secret code word of the month, something you can do. Something you can do is the super secret code words of the month. Put that, and then if you'd like to put anything else in that message, I like to read through every single one of these. So if there's anything else you'd like to put in there, I'd love to hear about how your studies have been, how long you've been studying for this, you just passed the exam, whatever it happens to be. I'd love to get those updates. You can, of course, add that into the body of the message as well. If this is on a line by itself, it's just easier for me to find, so I can get that email to you even faster. The super secret code word of the month, something you can do. And you can, of course, use those. These CEUs are good for whatever you'd like to use them for. Most people use them for renewing their certification, although these days I think most people are doing the CertMaster CE. But, of course, I have other people that use these same CEUs for other types of purposes as well. So that might help you as you're getting into this. Something you can do is our super secret code word of the month. Now, I know we're at the top of the hour, but let's do another question because I've been talking a lot on this one. So let's go through this question. This one, fortunately, not a lot of abbreviations in the question itself. This one asks, which of the following would be the best way to securely store web server encryption keys? Would that be jump server, HSM, load balancer, reverse proxy, or IPS? Those are the 5 different options. All 5 of those are real things, by the way. So it could be any one of those. The question again asked, which of the following would be the best way to securely store web server encryption keys? Would that be a jump server, HSM, load balancer, reverse proxy, or IPS? That's what we want to know. See if you happen to know. If you know the answer, go to professormesser.com/QA to lock in your answer. Please, no answers in the chat room. Please, no hints in the chat room. I want to find out what the different answer might be. Go to professormesser.com/QA and lock in your answer. See what it happens to be. All of these, by the way, are things you need to know. They are all from the CompTIA exam objectives. So if you don't recognize one of these terms or devices, then you should absolutely make a note of that and go back to your studies and make sure you're familiar with that as you step through it. I think that might be something that can help you as you go through the details of this particular question anyway. There might be questions on your exam or question on other exams or even in the same study group where the answers are not real. But I try to put real answers in here so that if you didn't get it right, you at least see the term, and that might make you decide to go out and learn more about that particular term. So that's why I mentioned that. That might really help as we go through the details of this. Which of the following would be the best way? See if you can lock in that answer. A number of you already have locked in that answer, so let's see how you did. The question again, which of the following would be the best way to securely store web server encryption keys? Would that be a jump server, HSM, load balancer, reverse proxy, or IPS? Let's show the results. 70% of you or so say that it is an HSM is the answer. We got 15% that's a jump server, and then single digits for the rest. We have IPS at 8% and reverse proxy at 7%, which are effectively a two-way tie for third place. And then last place, load balancer with a mere 1%. Ironically, it's the load balancer where we would probably put the server encryption key, but it would probably not be one of these others. However, we're talking about securely storing web server encryption keys. This can be an enormous problem for something like a data center. Let's say you have 100 web servers. Those 100 web servers are completely different. They all have different domains they cover. So each one of them has a different web server encryption certificate. This makes it a little bit more challenging for someone to manage how you secure all of those hundreds of different keys. Well, fortunately, we've already thought of that. And we've come up with a technology that is specifically designed to store and secure this very critical piece of encryption technology that is our hardware security module, or an HSM. Commonly see these in data centers. They're in a case where you have to do a lot of data center type control. And of course, this is where a perfect place to store things like these web server certificates, because we don't want anyone else to get access to any of those. And this is a great place to back up all of the keys that are in your network. These are occasionally a purpose-built appliance. In fact, they might have other cryptographic capabilities built into them, or they may be an appliance that you create very similar to the server that we see on the screen here. These might have cryptographic accelerators in there and sit between a user and a web server so that they perform the encryption and decryption process. So we offload it from the web server and put it into a piece of hardware that is designed to do it very, very quickly. These days, most web servers are fast enough, but there may be some particular scenarios where offloading that is a really, really good idea. And an HSM, some HSMs, not all of them support that, but a number of HSMs do support that. Now, this is, I see a lot of people get confused over this and a TPM, a trusted platform module. Trusted platform module is something that would go into your local device, like your desktop, your laptop, or your mobile device, that provides cryptographic functionality for those devices. But it's not a place that is used to securely store web server encryption keys. Those are usually stored either on the web server itself, which can be relatively secure, but an even more secure and an easier way to manage them is through the use of a hardware security module, or an HSM. So that should be the answer that you were looking for. And in fact, 70% of you say HSM is the right answer. That's what we wanted. A jump server is a server that commonly sits right in the front of a network where you can jump into that device. And once you are authenticated and you jump into that very secure device, you can then jump to other machines within that internal network. And we commonly see that with things like managed service providers that need access to a network, or maybe you are trying to do some screen sharing of devices. You first have to get into the jump server, and from the jump server, you can perform the screen sharing. So that's one that comes in handy. We also have other options here, like an IPS, an intrusion prevention system, which are great for identifying any type of known vulnerabilities that may be hitting your network, but they're not used to store encryption keys. These days, we don't commonly see a standalone IPS. Usually the IPS functionality is built into a next generation firewall. And then 7% of you say a reverse proxy. Reverse proxies are great devices. They can really help with managing and controlling traffic going in and out of your network, but that's not where you would store encryption keys. In fact, you would probably have the reverse proxy get the encryption key from the HSM, use that encryption key, and then have it in a format where it's not stored locally on that reverse proxy. And then lastly, 1% of you say load balancer, and for good reason. It's another scenario where the load balancer may be providing that intermediary process. Maybe you're offloading your decryption onto the load balancer. Well, in that particular case, it needs a decryption encryption key. And storing those on the HSM is great. Your load balancer would get it from the HSM, use that key, and then if that machine is turned off, that key is no longer stored on the load balancer, so you don't have to worry about anyone else getting access to that when that load balancer is not used. So hopefully that gives you some idea, some scope as to what this would be. Indeed, the right answer here is hardware security module, or an HSM, to make that happen. Now, I know we're at top of the hour, but I've been talking so much on this one, I would like to do one more question, or one more live question here on the stream. So we'll do another one really quick here. This question right here asks very quickly, a security engineer has collected evidence from a security breach. Which of the following would maintain data integrity and avoid tampering of this data? Would that be legal hold, FDE, event log capture, RAID, or chain of custody? A security engineer has collected evidence from a security breach. Which of the following would maintain data integrity and avoid tampering of this data? Would it be legal hold, FDE, event log capture, RAID, or chain of custody? You can find out what that is. Lock in your answer. If you think you know what it is, follow the link, professormesser.com/QA, and lock in your answer. See what it happens to be. If you ever work through these problems and these questions, hopefully this is something that you might be able to figure out. But all of these, again, are from the CompTIA exam objectives: legal hold, FDE, event log capture, RAID, and chain of custody. Make sure you know what all 5 of those are. They are somewhat intertwined here, especially in this question, which makes it a little bit more difficult. But a number of you are locking in your answers here, so maybe you folks did pretty well with knowing what this one happens to be. There's your link, professormesser.com/QA. Lock in your answer. See if you can get that particular question pulled up in here. This one hopefully is one that you're familiar with already as we go into the answer mode. Let's see how we did. The question again is, a security engineer has collected evidence from a security breach. Which of the following would maintain data integrity and avoid tampering of this data? Would it be a legal hold, FDE, event log capture, RAID, or chain of custody? Let's see how you did with this one. 50%, 50, right down the middle, say chain of custody, which makes me wonder if some of the others are perhaps more in line with what people were looking for. 18% say event log capture, 14% said FDE, full disk encryption, and 13% said legal hold. And lastly, 5% say RAID, a redundant array of independent or inexpensive disks. So in this case, 50% is a pretty good number. That's the majority. Is it really chain of custody? Well, if you're trying to maintain integrity of anything, chain of custody is a great way to do that. You document who touches, who has access. Every single person who comes into contact with this is documented and stored in a way that can't be changed. You can do this with physical evidence. You put it into a bag, you seal the bag, you write your name on that seal. If anybody unseals that bag, then obviously there's a notice on that bag that something happened. So another one of those situations where you might run into that. If anyone is touching that evidence, they're looking at that evidence, they are in any way interacting with that evidence, then you're going to need some way to know who did that. Do we have a log? Do we have hashes? Do we have a way to make sure they didn't change anything? Hashing is a great way to be able to take a hash and then later on take another hash and make sure those hashes are the same. If they're the same, no one changed anything with that data. If the hash is changed, then the data changed, and that might be a big problem for someone putting together some type of legal document, especially as it relates to something like a breach or an attack. If you're digitally doing this, it's a little different than working with physical evidence, but the same idea applies, that we need to lock that data down and in some way confirm that the data cannot be changed and confirm that nothing in that data has been modified from the time that we collected that data. Chain of custody is what allows us to do that, and that's why 50% of you answered E. Now, an event log capture is a great great thing to have. We can certainly see people that may have accessed some of the data by looking at an event log capture, but we want to be sure that we maintain data integrity, and we want to make sure that there's no one tampering with the data, which is effectively the same thing in this particular scenario. An event log capture might tell us that someone accessed the data. It could even possibly tell us that the person accessing the data could possibly change the data, but this is not going to tell us, did they actually make that change? Do we still have data integrity? Did the data that we're looking at now, is it exactly the same data that we collected previously? Event log data is not going to tell us that. So that's not going to be the right answer. A full disk encryption is great to protect data if you don't have the proper authentication, but that doesn't mean someone couldn't authenticate into a full disk encryption device, modify data, and then log out again. We would have no way to know that the data was changed. So full disk encryption doesn't provide data integrity. It only protects the data if you don't have authentication into the device. 13% of you say legal hold. A legal hold is an administrative function. It's a piece of paper that they hand to you that says, here is a bunch of data that we would like for legal reasons. You need to collect this data. You need to set this data aside. You need to make sure this data is not changed. You need to make sure this data is not modified in any way and not deleted. So that's great. We can look at that and go, I'll make sure that happens. But it doesn't actually do anything to provide data integrity. It just tells you, you have to make sure the data has integrity. That's a little bit different. A piece of paper isn't going to stop somebody from modifying the data. You have to have some other mechanism to identify and know if that data has changed. A legal hold is not going to do that for you. And then lastly, RAID, a redundant array of independent or inexpensive disks, depending on when you learn this. The RAID is great for maintaining uptime and availability, but the RAID is just a storage device. If somebody modifies data, we have no idea the data was modified, even if it's on a RAID array. So in this case, RAID would not be the right answer. The only one that makes any sense to confirm that we can maintain data integrity and avoid tampering of the data is indeed the 51% of you that chose chain of custody. That is the correct answer. That is exactly what we were looking for. Maybe that's one that as you're looking at this big list of things, you may want to go through that particular video on this one. It's from the SY0-601 exam, section 4.5, the video name, Digital Forensics. You can learn a lot more about chain of custody and other things that you might have there. So hopefully that will help you a little bit as you step through the different options. Well, that covers, I know we kind of did a little bit of overtime, but that covers all of the new questions I have for you. But why don't we do one more question? This particular question, though, is one that you may have seen before if you already own my Security Plus practice exams. This is something that I put together because I found a lot of the practice exams online. People were telling me, oh, I took a practice exam I got. It was really hard, much harder than the exam ended up being. And I reminded them when they said that, well, that meant that the exams you use, the practice exams you use, weren't very good. They shouldn't be harder than the exam you're taking. They should be exactly the same difficulty as the exam you're using. They should be exactly following the exam objectives. They shouldn't be going off scope of the exam objectives either. And yet a lot of the exams I happen to see go way off topic for some reason. The CompTIA sticks to those exam objectives very, very closely. Very rarely would you ever see a question go off of those exam objectives. And so I thought, why don't I create some practice exams that do exactly that? They stick to the exam objectives. That is so important if you are taking an exam or practicing to take an exam, that the practice exams are actually accurate to the real exam that you will be taking. So let's go through an exam question that I have. This is from my practice exams. This is question A13. I have 3 separate practice exams that include both multiple choice and performance-based questions. This one happens to be a multiple choice-based question. It says a CISO would like to decrease the response time when addressing security incidents. Unfortunately, the company does not have the budget to hire additional security engineers. Which of the following would assist the CISO with this requirement? Would it be ISO 27701, PKI, IAAS, or SOAR? Now, on my my practice exams, these are in a PDF, but there is a bit more that you can get out of the PDF, because I created links in the PDF where if you just want to know, is it A, B, C, or D, you can go to a page that has A, B, C, or D. But you also got answers in here where it is the details. And if you click the details, it takes you to page 50. So you suddenly go way over to page 50 and you can answer this particular question. And it tells you, gives you the question again, it gives you the possible answers, and it tells you the answer is D, SOAR. And as with many practice exams that you might find, it tells you why that is the right answer. And it says SOAR, Security Orchestration, Automation, and Response, is designed to make security teams more effective by automating processes and integrating third-party security tools. One of the things you'll notice with these questions is anytime there's an abbreviation, I like to spell it out. We mentioned earlier, there's so many abbreviations in this exam. So I think any chance that I can give you to see the abbreviation spelled out is something that might help you. Now, one of the problems I have with these types of practice exams is I always get them wrong, and it never tells me why I got it wrong. So when I wrote my book, I made sure to go through every incorrect answer and explain why each incorrect answer does not fit this particular question. So you can read through every single one of those and learn why that particular question doesn't quite apply. It wasn't quite the answer we were looking for. Another nice part about this, by the way, is even if you get the question right, I highly recommend you read through the other answers, because on your exam, you might get a question about ISO 27701 or PKI or infrastructure as a service. So you've got other options there. Now, if you read through that question, we had one earlier in the study group that talked about OT. A lot of people are asking, well, I don't know what OT is. One of the things I also do at the bottom of every question on the answer page is I give you a link to the video that describes the technology that was mentioned in the question. So that if you didn't understand anything about the question, I get those all the time too, you can go watch this video which describes that technology. Then you can come back to this. There's also a QR code. So if you got the physical version of this book, it's one that can help you find that. That is the right answer. D, SOAR, if you were looking for this. And since I'm in a PDF reader, I can click the back button in my PDF reader and go to the next question on my list and just keep going through the questions as we are in here. Something that might help you with your studies in my PDF, either the digital edition PDF. There's also a physical edition printed version. Looks just like this one. It's a big, thick book because it's 380 pages with 3 separate 90-question exams. Each exam has 5 performance-based questions and 85 multiple-choice-based questions. So you get 90 questions. You get 3 sets of those 90 questions to go through. That's something that might help you as well in your studies. You can find out more about my practice exams by going to professormesser.com/securitype, or simply follow the links at the top of the Professor Messer website. Hopefully that will be something you can find. Something might help you. A lot of you have heard me talk already about the CompTIA exam objectives. I've only said it 157 times in this single study group already. And that's because it is the definitive list of exactly what you need to know to pass this exam. I mentioned earlier, they don't go off of this list. They don't ever seem to go away from the topics that are on this list. So it's a perfect guideline if you're studying for your exam, and it's free. Go to professormesser.com/objectives to follow the link over to the CompTIA website, or simply go to CompTIA exam objectives. Type that into your favorite search engine. It will take you to the page where you can, of course, download and use these objectives. If you know every single one of these bullets, you can explain every single one of these bullets to someone else, or maybe to yourself in a mirror. You're ready to take your exam and you're going to pass it, because this is the list. You don't have to know anything else than what's on this list. Spend all of your time on the exam objectives. If you run into another book or a set of practice exams that are asking questions that are not in the exam objectives, you might want to check to be sure those questions are for this version of the exam. A lot of times they use old questions. And with the 601, half the exam was changed. So half the exam was thrown out. So that means a lot of these older questions just simply don't apply anymore. Make sure you're following the objectives. Go to professormesser.com/objectives. We do one of these study groups for Security Plus every month. We do A+ study groups, Network Plus study groups, and Security Plus study groups. You can find our calendar on our website. Go to professormesser.com/calendar to know exactly when the next live stream is going to be. We've got a bunch ready for March. March is a weird month timing-wise for me, so you'll notice it's a little bit different than our normal schedule. On March the 7th and 9th, are the A+ study groups. And then on March 14th and 16th are the Security Network Plus and Security Plus study groups, respectively. So we're sort of doubling up that second week to fit 2 more in for the month of March. Make sure you're familiar with that. And of course, if you're already on our Discord, there is an events calendar on the Discord that I update always. So you can either go to the link that's here on your screen at professormesser.com/calendar or simply go to the Discord. Those are 2 great places to go to find those. I think if you're someone who is working through and trying to find what we're doing, I try to put those everywhere so you can find exactly what you're looking for. Well, we did go through an hour of Q&A already. We went kind of over an hour of Q&A, but that's okay, right? But don't worry, we're not done yet. There's an after show coming up where you can ask me questions. So no longer can I sit through the questions of asking you. You can ask me something for a change. Find that. Stick around for that. Just stay where you are. And as soon as we finish up here, we'll start the after show. Of course, you can always find our weekly pop quiz question for Security Plus on Twitter at professormesser.com/Twitter or on Instagram at professormesser.com/Instagram. If you like this video, we would love it if you would give it a thumbs up. That really does help us out quite a bit with our friends over at YouTube. And if you haven't subscribed to our channel already, why haven't you done that? Go over to professormesser.com/YouTube. It's subscribe, something you can do for free. And you have my undying gratitude. It's something I really do appreciate. And thank you for doing so. We just passed 700,000 subscribers. I know. I can't even figure that out. That's amazing. So thank you so much for being a part of that. If you're not part of it, you should come on and be part of it too. Hit that subscribe button over on the Professor Messer YouTube channel. Don't forget about our discounted vouchers. Don't pay full price for vouchers. Go to professormesser.com/vouchers and get your built-in discount along with my free version of the Exam Hacks ebook. Stick around for the after show. We can talk about course notes. We can talk about exams. We can talk about other certifications, what's going on in the industry, and anything else you'd like to talk about in the after show. I want to thank you for being here. We couldn't do this without you. Thanks so much for your ongoing support. Stick around. We'll see you in the after show in just a moment, and we'll see you next time on the Security Plus study group. Okay. Let's see what I could get going here. One moment, please. There we go. Now I've got the chat room that I can bring over, and we will do our after show. Now, for those of you that haven't been in our after show before, one of the things we do is you put questions into either the YouTube chat or the chat that's on my website at professormesser.com/live. They're the same chat. I'm just embedding the YouTube chat onto my website. So I guess if you see a chat, you can put questions in there. I don't take questions from Discord, at least not at the moment. Right now, we're doing good to keep up with the chat that's on the YouTube side. So that's a good place to go. I think that's a really good way to get familiar with what's there. So I will take questions from the chat room. We will break down and see what different things you would like to talk about. Plenty to go through there. So I would love to take some of the questions. I saw a few good ones come back from there, but let's take a question as we are going through this. A good one to start with is one from Robert, who asks, what benefits do CompTIA certs give you in the real world? Well, this is probably something that I think a lot of people don't think about, is that let's say you went through everything that was in the A+, the Network Plus, and or the Security Plus exam, and you learned everything that you needed to know to earn that certification, but you didn't go take the exam. You have exactly the same knowledge. You've spent time going through every bullet. If you took the exam, you would easily be able to pass the exam, but you don't. Let's say you never take the exam. You would still have a core set of knowledge that you were able to accumulate from these what really is real world security, networking, and hardware software type environments. There is a huge amount of information you learn when you do a certification exam, whether it's from CompTIA, Microsoft, AWS, from Amazon, from Cisco, whoever it happens to be. Those certification exams are providing you with a core bit of information, a core piece of knowledge that you can then build on once you pass the certification exam, or in some cases, if you're someone who doesn't take the certification exam. So I think that a lot of people don't even think about that part of it, is that you are getting something by going through this process that you'll be able to use for the rest of your career. And you really will. There are things I pull from my Microsoft MCSE that I took 20 years ago that I can still use in the latest versions of Windows. So there's quite a bit that really help a lot when you're studying for these things. But ultimately, of course, earning these certifications are what employers are often looking for. So if you go out and look at a job description, and that job description says, be great if you had an A+ or a Network Plus or a Security Plus, whatever they're looking for, whatever the certification happens to be, that's something the employers understand, that you had to have this core foundational knowledge to be able to pass that certification exam. They're looking for that type of knowledge. That obviously is not the only thing they're looking for. And a lot of people tend to think that all I need is a certification and I'm good. I can get that job. No one's ever said that. No one's ever made that supposition, has ever claimed that that's the way it works. But it is one of the many components that employers would like to see from people who are applying to certain jobs. So ultimately, that's the benefit in the real world, is not only what you learn and that you'll be able to use for the rest of your career, but it also tells other people, especially employers, that you have learned it and it is certified that you have learned that information. So that can be pretty useful when you're out there doing that job hunt. Other questions. So there were other things in here. So Aaron asks, or is it Aaron? Are we going to do that? I think we should not. Poor Aaron's probably, you've had it. It's up to here with you. What's the best way to run through your practice exam? I think the process I just went through was one good way to do it. In fact, let me bring that up again. That's the way I do it, but it doesn't have to be the way to do it. I documented this in my practice exam. So when we went through it, there's the bottom of it. The practice exam, there it is. Let's put me in there so you can, there it is. The practice exam, you can do one at a time. Some people will go through each question. They will log the answer. I mean, my PDF reader allows me to do annotation. So I can grab, let's do a green one. And if I know the answer, I think I know the answer, I can mark it on my screen and then go to the next one. Or if you have it on a tablet, you can circle it or underline it or do whatever you'd like. You can annotate it right there on the screen. And then at the end, you can compile those to see how many did I get right, how many did I get wrong. So you could make it into an actual exam scenario. Let's start the clock. You got 90 minutes, go. And that's really one of the ways I designed these to be used. And you just go through question 1 all the way to question 90. Stop the clock. Did we do it in 90 minutes? How many did we get right? And I've got in the front of the book a list that tells you, did you get it right or did you not get it right? You can also do it in the way that I did it earlier, where I clicked on one answer, then I clicked on the question, then I clicked to see what the answer is. I read through the answers, then I hit the back button, I went to the next answer. So you could do them one at a time as well. One of the benefits of having that PDF is you can jump around and make all of that work at the same time. And I think that's a great way to work through the practice exams. Maybe that would help you too, Aaron, if you're ever into working through those and trying to figure out the way that works for you. Some people like doing them one at a time. Some people like using them as a mock exam and with a timer and everything. It's ultimately up to you. The real key, I think, is the knowledge that's in there. It's learning what is in that book that is going to be the most important, however you happen to get it out of the book. Going through the questions is really ultimately the important part. Here's a pretty good one. This one comes up from time to time. Do you plan to create study materials for CySa Plus? And I guess you could fill in the blank right there at the end. Are you planning to create study materials for Cisco, for CySa, for Pentest Plus, for CASP, for CISSP? I get a lot of questions around these. And I have a list of what I would like to work on next. Now, I'm currently in the middle of a project. We'll see what the ultimate results of that will be in the coming months. But once that project is over, maybe I work on another course. Maybe there's another one to update. There's other things I could be working on. I don't know the answer to this question, though. Until I finally sit down and start working on it, I don't know what the next course or the next thing is going to be. So this is one where currently CySa Plus, not at the top of my list, but this list tends to change from day to day, depending on how people are using it, the answers that I hear from people. So I think that's one where maybe it's something that might help you to go through just by knowing that I don't have any specific things that I'm going to put in that list, but I do keep a list, and someday we will see another course of some kind. What's it going to be? Well, we'll find out when that finally happens to make that happen. This is from Michael. It says, we talked earlier in the study group, there was a question on chain of custody and hashing. I talked about taking physical items and putting them into a bag and sealing the bag. You could do a similar thing with data, but the way that you would seal that bag and make sure that nobody changes any of the data is to take a hash of the data when you collect it. And that way, when you go to court 6 months later and they say, has anybody touched this data? You'll say, I don't know. Let's do another hash. We'll take the same hash of the data. And if the hash of the data that you just took matches the hash you took 6 months ago, nobody changed the data. There's your chain of custody, is that you were able to make sure that whoever touched the data did not modify anything. Chain of custody, obviously, not only is associated with the integrity of the evidence, but also who touched the evidence. The hashing is the part that deals with integrity of the evidence. Other questions. Let's keep going through this list. We got a few more. This one from Hexillionaire, of course, is and way to look up there high. You just don't want to be a millionaire. You want to be many, many millionaires. It says, hi there. Are the questions updated after purchasing it? I guess I'm assuming you're talking about the practice exams book. They don't have to be. If CompTIA was to change their exam objectives in the middle of the production, maybe halfway through the 3.5-year cycle, they decide to change something in the exam objectives, I would, of course, make those changes to all of my study materials. But fortunately for all of us, CompTIA, when they release that first set of exam objectives, they don't tend to have any significant changes to those exam objectives for the entire lifetime of that version of the certification. So the SY0-601 we look at today is exactly the same SY0-601 that we received in 2020. So that's great for everybody who is studying. It's great for people that create the content. You never have to worry about things changing. But if something was to change, what if tomorrow Microsoft goes out of business? That's not going to happen. But let's just broadly look at this, that Microsoft no longer, they decide we're not in the operating system business anymore. Well, that would certainly change the A+ exam. So I would probably have to go back and change things about the A+. Or maybe CompTIA would wait for the next version of the A+ to come out to make any changes. But if they do, I'll make changes to my book. Fortunately, they have not done that, which makes it very easy for me to deal with when I'm working through all of these. You never want to be in that position where you have to somehow figure out what has changed between one version or the other. That's one of the things I do first off when I get a new set of exam objectives is I effectively do a diff. I compare what I have with what's new and see what has changed between those two versions. And between major versions of the exam updates, there's a lot of changes, and I make copious notes. I make sure I know exactly what those changes are so that when I create a course, you're getting exactly what's being asked of you by CompTIA, which I think is incredibly important. And for some reason, not many people think that's important on the content side. I don't know why, but it is super important for those of you taking the exam, of course. Other questions. Let's keep going through this list. Other things, we'll keep going. Other notes in here. This is really brings up an interesting point. Ivan says, do I need to notify my employer every time I renew this certification? There are some employers that that use your certification to gain them certain credentials or access from a third party, usually a manufacturer. So, for example, if you're working with the federal government might want all of the engineers in your firm to have the Security Plus certification, and they may require that. And they may ask every year, is everybody up to date with the latest Security Plus? Is everybody renewed their Security Plus certification? Does everybody in your organization who is technical have an updated and current version of the certification exam? But there may be times when an employer wants you to get the certification. That's your task for the year, and then they're done. They don't care if you renew it or anything else. So that's really up to the employer. They're not going to know unless you tell them. And you may be able to update every 3 years and use that. I've had employers that tell me on my annual review, I need to have certain tasks that I've done throughout the year. One of those tasks usually is to earn an industry certification in the topics or the particular vertical market that our particular product deals with. So if you're working for a Security Plus, a security related organization, you would take the Security Plus or something security related. That might help. So as I go through and understand where you are and what you're doing, some employers may need notification, others may not. So that's completely up to the employer, Ivan. You may want to check in with your employer to see what they would like and if that's important to them. Sometimes it's not important. Sometimes it's super important. Just have to make sure. Other questions. Let's keep going on this list. Got a lot of good stuff that's come through. Thank you for putting those questions into the YouTube chat. I'm trying to get to them as fast as I can. So I'm kind of behind the scenes here and behind the chat as I'm going through all of these. Other questions. What website should I use for finding IT job postings? I've been using LinkedIn and Indeed. Didn't know of any other websites for IT postings I should be aware of. You know, the challenge is that it's different depending on your geography. So inside the United States, LinkedIn and Indeed and Dice and some of the others those are the big names. When you go outside the U.S., there's other big names in those particular geographies, but that's a pretty good place to start. LinkedIn and Indeed are two great places to go for job postings. But there's plenty of others. Dice.com, I just mentioned. We used to have Monster. That was the monster. Now they're a little bit smaller of a monster, but they're still there. And there's other websites and things you might find where people are posting. And of course, go directly to the employer. Sometimes on their websites, you can find job postings. And because they're not having to deal with a recruiter or pay a third party part of your salary if they were to hire you, that might actually be a better way to get your resume in with a company because there's a financial benefit to them hiring you versus hiring somebody that was brought in from a recruiter. It does weigh on the thought process when somebody's trying to hire somebody. So those are pretty good. I think if you're looking for a job or trying to figure out what certification do I take, you should go to Indeed. You should go to Dice.com. You should go to LinkedIn Jobs and have a look at what those jobs are asking for. You may have decided I need to earn my Security Plus. And then you go look at the jobs that apply to you and realize everybody's asking for the A+. So you may have to make a decision. What you thought would be the right certification to bring to the table may be very different based on what employers are looking for. And so that should be your first place where you start, I think, is with some of these online job posting sites. I think it'd be really good. Other questions. Let's keep going. Somebody else, the chat room's so good at this, who mentioned USA Jobs is a good one for government jobs. It's absolutely the case. So very good. And somebody else mentioned Dice. So they're out there. Folks in the chat room will fill you in on the good ones that you do. So that might help you. I want to thank Robert in the chat room for the $10 super chat. Robert says, hi, James. You got me through A+ in 2017, Network Plus in 2020, and yesterday got me across the line for Security Plus. Congratulations. Robert says, I hate to be at the end of materials. I'm going to miss you. Couldn't have done it without you. We're going to miss you too, Robert. But you can always stick around. You can come back to a live stream from time to time and say hello. Thank you so much for the super chat. Congratulations on the trifecta, the A+, the Network Plus, and the Security Plus. I think that's great. Who knows? I may be able to get another course out of here that you can join us and go through this process again. It's always fun to get that certification at the end, put it in your pocket, and be able to use that in your career as you're moving up and moving out and moving away, and finding more and more things to learn and more things to do, and hopefully getting a bigger paycheck at the end of that. Congratulations, and thanks again for the $10 super chat as well. We sure appreciate that part too. Let's do some more. Michael says, is it necessary to have your Network Plus before obtaining Security Plus? What networking fundamentals would you recommend having? It's not necessary to do anything before Security Plus. They even tell you, if you look at the Security Plus exam objectives, that there are no formal prerequisites for the A+, the Network Plus, or the Security Plus exams. You could walk in off the street, go take the exam. They don't care where you're from. They don't care what you know. They don't care what you've done. You can take those exams without anyone asking you about your history or your knowledge. But they do say in the exam objectives, it'd be great if you had a couple years of experience in IT before taking the Security Plus. Because Security Plus does talk about networking, it talks about operating systems, it talks about things that are not necessarily on the exam objectives, but they do have a certain amount of weight from the A+ and Network Plus that might help you. A little bit of preparation on those earlier certifications could help you during the Security Plus learning process. Now, that said, I have lots of people that come to my site, take the Security Plus course, who have zero knowledge and experience in IT. Security Plus is their first exam. It's the first thing they're doing with information technology, which seems kind of crazy when you think about what people are doing, but in reality, it's those certifications that like Security Plus, that employers on the federal government side often look for before they would want A+ or Network Plus. In fact, if you look at the requirements for working for the Department of Defense here in the United States, the A+ and Network Plus isn't on their minimum list. The minimum list, one of the more popular certifications on their minimum list, is Security Plus. And that's why I think a lot of people start with Security Plus, because they're working towards one of those federal positions where Security Plus is the starting point. So earning A+ doesn't help them. Earning Network Plus doesn't help them. Security Plus does. So is it a little bit harder if you haven't had A+ or Network Plus? Maybe a little bit, but not a lot. And certainly everything you need to know is in the Security Plus course. So as long as you know what's in the course, you'll do fine with the exam. So you may at that point need to go back and learn more about networking and learn more about technologies and operating systems and hardware. But I think that's something that you don't have to worry about until you get through the main requirements from the prospective employer. And in the case of the federal government, those main requirements are the Security Plus exam. So it gives you some idea. Other questions. Let's see other things that might be in here. This is a pretty good one because I think it's a very broad question and everybody has a different answer. The question from Cyber Lotus asks, what do you recommend after Security Plus? We're certainly not done. It's more of the beginning. You've certainly now leveled up to another point in your career. Now, what are you doing with this Security Plus? Did you get Security Plus? You get an entry-level position with the Department of Defense or a contractor with the DoD? Did you get Security Plus because your current employer wanted you to earn that? Or maybe you're looking at some jobs. You have a foundation in operating systems. You've been doing some networking, and now you'd like to move into more of a security role. So you feel that maybe I need a security certification to go along with that. And maybe you're looking at job postings, and those job postings say that you should have a Security Plus. That's something you should do. So now you go get Security Plus. Now you've earned that. Now what do you do? Well, I guess it depends on what you want to do. Are you looking at jobs where you're doing security in the cloud? Maybe you need to get some cloud-based certifications. Are you looking at security as it relates to operating systems? Maybe you should get some Microsoft certifications or some Linux-based certifications, or maybe you want to do more with security. Maybe you already have a security job and you want to do more with a SIM. You want to work more with a firewall. You want to understand more about the encryption technologies you're using, or multi-factor authentication, or anything else associated with security and data. then you might want to get a Palo Alto Networks firewall certification. You might want to go get your CISSP. The real answer to this question, what do I recommend, means nothing. I can give you recommendations, but they're worthless because I don't know what your path is. I don't know what your goals are. I don't know where you're headed. So we could have a conversation about that, certainly, and then I can give you a set of recommendations. But for the most part, whenever we start looking at Security Plus, usually people are looking towards more of a security role, and the employers are often going to tell you, yeah, we'd love it if you got a CISSP. Yeah, we really do a lot with Palo Alto Networks. We'd like you to get Palo Alto Network certified. That's very common and something that might already move you in the right direction once you start heading that way. So don't worry about it. The river that you're on, it will take you down the path. There's only one way to go. We're going to follow the water. Sometimes you're on the left side of the river. Sometimes you're on the right side of the river. Sometimes you're in the center, but the river is going to kind of flow a certain direction. Sometimes you can use your paddle and go your own way. Sometimes you can follow the flow of everyone else. But ultimately, what's ahead of you in the river is going to help you decide what the next thing is going to be after Security Plus. I'm going to take this one from George just because I'd like to pat myself on the back a little bit. We worked hard to create this set of free and available training courses on YouTube, and it just took off. It just went crazy. And thanks to you, certainly. 700,000 subscribers. We sure appreciate that. YouTube does give awards at certain levels of subscribers. If you look back in the back here, there's the up here. It's the wrong side. There we go. So that is sort of it's cut off here, but that's my plaque from YouTube. That is my 100,000 subscriber plaque. The next one would be a gold plaque, I think, at 1 million subscribers. So let's get there. Let's go get the next one is 1 million subscribers. I don't know if they'll send, maybe they still do the plaques. I think they might. So that's what they would send me next, hopefully, is when we get to that point, and I'll be showing you that new plaque when we get it. Thank you so much for your support so far. I say it all the time. We couldn't do it without you. We really couldn't. This is all about what your support has been. So thanks so much for that. Gives me another chance to thank you. Thanks for that question. Other questions. Let's see other ones that might be here. Folks in the chat room saying, do more Q&A. That was the first hour. Well, we do have more Q&A coming. All you got to do is come back next month, and I'll have more Q&A for you. I haven't written any. So there you go. I have to write it. That's the real challenge with the Q&A. It takes about half a day for me to work through the Q&A. So if you're someone who is sort of fighting their way through these questions and answers, that's why I wrote the book. So I've got a whole book full of questions you haven't even seen yet that might help you. And of course, we have an entire set of replays for all of our study groups. The 601 study group, the questions we did in 2020 still apply today. So go back through our entire playlist of 601 study groups. That would be a great way. If you haven't seen those already, that's a great set of questions to go through. Other questions. Let's go in here. Oh, first I want to thank Archie in the chat room with the $50 super chat. Thank you so much for the support. Archie says, I just got home from passing the Network Plus. Congratulations on your new Network Plus, Archie. He writes, in the last 12 months, I passed A+, Security Plus, and Network Plus with zero professional experience, all because of your videos, practice tests, and course notes. Thank you so much for facilitating my midlife career change. Now all you need is a wife with blonde hair and a sports car, and you're good to go. That's all you need. Or maybe a boat. Do you need a boat? I'm trying to think of what you would need in the midlife crisis. We need a motorcycle. You know, one of those things. I'm more than happy to help you on your path to destruction. I think this is a path to construction, though. Getting an A+, Network Plus, and Security Plus in your pocket can only help you when you go to look for those jobs in IT. Congratulations on that. It's zero professional experience now, but now's the time you start moving over on the IT side and actually moving up, leveling up in IT. And this is really just the beginning of that path. Congratulations, Archie, and thanks so much for your support too. It's always interesting to see what the next steps are going to be and where we go with these. So absolutely, congratulations on that. That's always good to hear. I always like hearing the stories of when people pass their exams. It's great motivation for me. because when we're done with the live stream and the lights go out in here, I got to get something done. What do I do? And I think back of the folks that are using these to get more another job, to get more financial stability, to get that next job or get that next better job. That's motivation for me. Absolutely. Other questions. Let's keep going through these that are in the list. Let's keep scroll through what we have here. I know there's a lot of questions here, so we'll go into what these might be. This is a pretty good one. Already has a straw man at the front of it, but we'll answer the question anyway. Rob asks, with a $5 super chat as well. So yeah, I'm going to take the question. Since the industry standard is Cisco, it's industry standard, not Cisco, would it be better to get a CCNA cert over CompTIA Network Plus cert? A lot of problems with this. Obviously, there is no industry standard for networking. Cisco certainly has a very strong market share. Very strong market share. And a lot of people who know Cisco have been around for so long in the industry that it seems as if they have a larger market share than they really do. But it is a strong market share. So people naturally look to Cisco for certifications relating to networking. However, up to this point, Cisco has not had, and up to this point, they still do not have, an entry-level networking certification. And so CCNA is in no way entry level. That's an intermediate level certification. So it doesn't have the foundational knowledge you might need when you get into doing networking. In fact, they sort of miss out. You don't have a lot of information from Network Plus in the CCNA because they just don't have time in that single certification. It's a one test, one single cert. And so you can't fill it with every possible networking fundamental. Especially when you're considered that the CCNA has so much Cisco command line, hands-on switching, routing, and protocols. Well, you just don't have time for a lot of other things. So what I see a lot of people doing is they take their Network Plus first to get the networking fundamentals, and then they move up to the CCNA. Now, could you take the CCNA without the Network Plus? You certainly could. But there are fundamentals in the CCNA that you're now going to have to learn anyway, and it's going to take longer for you if you jump directly into the CCNA because it is an intermediate level cert. There's a number of people that have visited my site that said, I jumped in the CCNA, but it was overwhelming. They hit you with so much networking information and expect you to have already known it. Yes, they do, because it's an intermediate level cert. The CCNA and Network Plus are in no way comparable to each other. They don't interchange for each other as badly as the internet people would tell you they do. They don't in any way. The reason we know that is because recently Cisco has announced, you know what? We need an entry-level networking cert. So I think it's on March the 1st they roll out 2 new entry-level certification, one for security, one for networking. I wonder what they might be trying to compete with. So you will see 2 new certifications from Cisco. One of them is an entry-level networking cert where the CCNA is the next expected step from there. And another one is a cybersecurity cert. They use that term. It means nothing, but they used it anyway because it's great for marketing. Cybersecurity entry-level cert, and their higher-level security cert is the one that you would get after that one. So that's why I tell people there is no better or worse. There is only what employers would like to have and where your current knowledge base is. The Cisco certs are great, so go get a Cisco cert. Microsoft certs are great. Go get a Microsoft cert. The CompTIA certs are great. Go get a CompTIA cert. Same thing with AWS. Same thing with the virtualization certs. Same things with other cloud providers. There's lots of places you can go in this industry. There is no one single cert that usurps or changes the scope or ability of any other cert that you might run into. So I think that's a great idea, is to look at all of the different options available. If you think the Cisco cert works better for you, go take the Cisco cert. If you think the Network Plus is a better fit for you currently, go take the Network Plus. But they are certainly not interchangeable, and I would not recommend that you do that. Instead, find the one that is the right fit for you. So that's my recommendation. Other questions. Let's see what we got here. I'm running out of time. Running. We're going fast here. Let's keep going. other types of things, this is a pretty good one because it is a common question I get in my email box. Ali asks, is it enough to watch the videos from Professor Messer on YouTube and solve some practical questions? There you go. Done. Why even solve practical questions? Just watch the videos. That's the question I usually get is, can I just watch the videos and then go take the exam? Well, you could. The videos are designed to cover every topic from the exam objectives, and you could watch every video and then go take the exam. I really think that's probably not a good percentage passing option. That's not the best way to do it. I always tell people there's no shortcuts here. I didn't create a set of videos that gets rid of books and practice exams and hands-on. You need all of these things working together. You need a good book. You need a good video course. You need some labs and hands-on work, and you need some practice exams. All four of those are really the best possible things you could put together to give you the best possible outcome on your exam. Now, you could get away with not doing one or two of those. And if you're very familiar with the industry itself, you've already been working in security, you're already familiar with a lot of these security terms that we talk about in Security Plus, then maybe you can get away with just watching the videos. But I think the majority of folks who are learning this from the very beginning, they have no prior knowledge in the industry, really need a good book. You need a good set of videos, you need some labs and hands-on work, and you need some practice exams. So I always tell people, get all four of those if you want the best possible outcome when you go to take the exam, because that's what's really going to help you is learning in different ways. A book teaches you differently than videos teach you. Hands-on gives you a better perspective than watching someone else do it in a video. And that's why on my site, you'll find I recommend books, I recommend practice exams, I recommend labs, I recommend videos. They're all on my site for exactly that reason, that it's never one thing and there is no easy button. You really do have to go through this content and know it very, very well. And I would highly recommend you do that because if you go through the videos, you might not, some things might not stick the way they might stick when you read them or when you work with them at the command line or when you go through a set of practice exams. That's what I would recommend. Might help you. Other questions. Let's keep going with these. So similar scenario here. All right, can I jump straight to CySa Plus and skip Security Plus? You can do whatever you'd like. There's no formal prerequisites. CompTIA will let you do anything you would like. You can jump straight into CySa Plus and skip anything else you've ever done. Probably not the best chance of a good outcome on that one either. CySa Plus is not an entry-level certification. There are already things in CySa Plus that they expect you to already know when you start working on that certification, and there's a bit more hands-on with that particular cert, things you have to know about specific utilities and other pieces. So not exactly the best move because quite honestly, who's going to hire you looking for just a CySa Plus when you don't even have the foundational knowledge yet? There's a process that people go through in IT where you usually start at the bottom because that's where everybody starts. You begin learning and gathering this information. And then as you move up through the ranks, you start leveling up and you keep leveling up in your career. So you start with no certs and maybe you get a help desk job with no certs. That happens. And in that help desk, you go and you learn your A+. You earn your A+ certification. And they say, you know what would be good if you worked on our network operations center. So they move you up into a networking role. And you realize, oh, I need to know more about networking. Let me go get my Network Plus. Let me go get my Cisco certification or whatever it is. And I get the next networking related cert. And then they say, well, you've already got operating systems down. You know the networking, you've been working with switches, you've been managing our routers, you've been doing things on the network side. Now let's move you into security. And now I need to get more security knowledge. Well, Security Plus is a great place to start. This is the reason why you generally don't start, when you're looking for a job for the first time, you don't apply to be the CEO generally, because you need some knowledge of the industry, you need some knowledge of business, you need knowledge of other things before you start making decisions in a role like that. Same thing applies in IT. People will tell me, I'm going to skip Network Plus and go straight to CCNA. And I say, well, why don't you just jump CCNA and go straight to CCIE? That's where people are making the money, because CCIE is incredibly difficult. That is a very complex certification to get with extensive written and hands-on knowledge that you need to know. The reason you don't jump straight into those higher level certs is because they're higher level certs. And that's what I would recommend to you as well, is you don't jump into those higher levels until you understand the foundational knowledge first, and then you're in pretty good shape. Other questions? Let's keep going through the list of these because I do have some time left here. Lots of these are very, there's a lot of great questions in this list and working through them. So I think this is sort of a combination question, and you've only asked it 50 times in the chat room, so I feel obligated to take it. And you're not going to like my answer, unfortunately. The reason I didn't answer it the first 49 times, here's why. This is Clement with a perfectly reasonable question. It's my answer that's not reasonable. The question asks, as someone from Germany, Guten Tag, which cert would be good for me? The ETICA or CompTIA? I don't know. I have no perspective of certifications and how they are looked at in Germany. There's the reason this particular question is well, not the question isn't awful. The question's great. The answer's awful, which is my fault. I just don't have a knowledge of what employers in Germany are looking for. But this is a great opportunity for me to tell you, go see what employers are looking for. Go see if you can find what someone in Germany who's hiring would like you to have. Would they like you to have the ETICA? Would they like you to have the CompTIA Security Plus? It's got to be one of those, right? Or maybe another. Maybe everybody says you need to be Azure certified. You need to be AWS certified. You need something else. The only way you're going to know is if you go to the job postings in München or Hamburg or wherever you are in Germany, and you see what jobs are available, and then you see what employers would like you to have. There are some geographies where certifications aren't important at all, that the hiring managers are just not into certifications. It's very geographical. In the US, we're very cert focused. Canada, very similar, somewhat in the UK as well. But I don't know about Germany. I just don't know. So that's why I didn't answer the first few times it was posted, because I'm not very knowledgeable in the German employers. But here's your chance to go to the job posting sites that are popular in Germany and find out what employers are looking for. Make a spreadsheet, list out all the jobs that you think you would apply that fit your knowledge in your area, and see, do any of them even ask for a cert? We need to know. So that's the idea behind this. Secondary question. This is one I answered in a previous study group, but we can answer it again. What do you think about ChatGPT and how it affects IT? I don't think about it very much. AI is nothing new. And in the case of ChatGPT, it's really not any very groundbreaking. It's just simply taking what we currently have with AI and putting it into a format that is a little bit different than what most people have used previously. But AI has been around for quite a while. You've seen mentions of this certainly in Security Plus is a good place to go. So things from years ago, we were already learning about security as it relates to AI, and certainly security as it relates to corrupting AI. And we've even seen some of that with ChatGPT and some of the most recent AI competitors that have been released by Google and Microsoft and others most recently. It's nifty and it's unique and it's funny, and we can compare things with others. But as people have seen, especially with highly technical topics, there is nuance. Now, there's some things where there's no nuance. If you are asking, what is a bit is either 1 or 0. So that's it. There's really no nuance there until you get into other types of technologies, of course. If you were getting into an environment that had maybe a different way of calculating, maybe you wouldn't deal with zeros or ones. But the problem is when you get into questions where somebody says, I have to put in a firewall and here's the scenario and what should I do? There's just too many variables there for an AI to be able to work out what the best possible solution might be for designing a network, for troubleshooting a network. And in fact, some of the ones that have been forwarded to me have just been wrong, technically wrong. So there's the problem, is that it's just not good. It's not that the potential isn't there, and it's not that the capabilities aren't possible. Certainly, it's possible that we have AI that does a lot of other things in the future. And it's certainly possible that we have an AI that can answer some questions for us. But quite honestly, when you start getting into technical questions, it doesn't do very well. So right now, it's not very good. And that's why whenever I start getting into problems and issues, people, and I'll tell you right now, there are people that have tried to use ChatGPT for learning certification exams, and they'll send me emails that have just wrong information in them. They said, ChatGPT said this, what do you think? Please don't send me those emails, by the way. I just cannot keep up with them. I have just a standard response where I say, I don't know what I think. Don't take comments from a robot as part of something that should be knowledgeable in technology, because it just doesn't know the right answers yet. That's why I tell people there's the things that ChatGPT does well and other AIs do well, go do those things well, but we've not seen a lot of good answers from a technical perspective with these technologies today. So maybe they'll get it together and we'll do a little more. But I just wonder, I seem to have a better success just doing a Google search or a Bing search, or pick your favorite search engine, and then going to a known, knowledgeable source for the answer to that particular question tends to be a lot more reasonable, and in this particular case, a lot more accurate than an AI who has no knowledge in the industry whatsoever. It's like I'm asking the ChatGPT what makes a layer 3 switch. It should, of course, say there's no such thing as a layer 3 switch, but it doesn't say that. What good is that? It should say there's no such thing as a layer 3 switch. It's such a simple question. You would think that ChatGPT would be able to get that one right, but it just doesn't. I don't know why. Other questions. For those of you not knowing the layer 3 switch inside joke, the reality is switching happens at layer 2, routing happens at layer 3. It should really be a layer 2 router. So from now on, I'm calling it a layer 2 router because it doesn't route at layer 2. It doesn't switch at layer 3. Why do we call it a layer 3 switch if it doesn't switch at layer 3? I don't know. It's what we call it. It's because the marketing people named it. And it does great. Other things in our chat, other questions in our chat. We talked earlier in the study group about HSMs, the hardware security modules. How do you interact with an HSM? Well, you usually don't. Usually there's a web-based front end and you configure it, and maybe you can upload certs that way. But most of the time it's the ones that I've seen have been a lower level HTTPS REST-based communication between the web server and the HSM. Sometimes there are other channels that it will use to transfer the data itself, but it's always with an encrypted channel between the HSM and the web server or the device that needs that certificate or the private key or whatever it's holding. Usually it's not an API that does that. I guess technically a REST API is really the best you could do with that, but a REST API would be probably the most common, I would think. They're really easy to set up, and you can set up different authentications and integrate other capabilities to make sure that the two devices can know who they're talking with. There's some extra security there. But almost everything's done from command line or a web-based front end on most devices these days, HSMs, firewalls, intrusion prevention, whatever it might be. It's the easy way to do it. And if it's in the cloud, every good product is going to have an API that you could write to. So a firewall, a load balancer, a cloud-based infrastructure, there's extensive APIs that you could write to and work with. So that helps a lot. And you'll find that's a great way to manage these devices. If you're very good at doing scripting and can integrate those scripts with an API, you can make a device do anything you'd like. You can have somebody say, it'd be nice if we had a backup of our firewall done every night at 1 in the morning. Okay, I'll write a little script that does that. And it simply uses the built-in API in the firewall to authenticate, grab the configuration, save it locally, and you can run that every night at 1 in the morning. I guess every morning at 1 in the morning, something like this. Somebody else has said, but wait, what do you mean there's no such thing as a layer 3 switch? I have seen this layer 3 switch in the real world, and it has been mentioned on professional exams. Yes, it has. We do call them layer 3 switches. There just happens to be no such thing as a layer 3 switch. Isn't that funny? That doesn't do it. But you're right. There are products that other people will call a layer 3 switch, and we should all call it the layer 3 switch. The reason I say is now we'll bring you in on the joke, which isn't a joke. It's really more of a learning tool. Is that when you're learning networking, this is really pointed towards the people that are in Network Plus or a Cisco course. When you're learning about these technologies and learning what switching does and learning what routing does, it makes it very confusing when you say that switching has a layer 3 component, because it doesn't. Switching is a layer 2 process. Routing is a layer 3 process. And the switch itself doesn't somehow change the way it switches because it's in a layer 3 switch. All a layer 3 switch is, you take a router and a switch that normally would be 2 different devices, cram them into the same chassis. That's a layer 3 switch. Wait, it's not switching differently? It is not. It's not routing differently? It is not. But a layer 3 switch, doesn't that switch at layer 3? It does not. It switches at layer 2, it routes at layer 3, and those two things don't talk to each other. They don't interact with each other. You simply have switching software and routing software in the same device. You configure them separately. You configure the switching to switch, you configure the routing to route, and you just have it in one box with one piece of firmware and one power supply or one pair of power supplies. So it's great. Layer 3 switches are great. I got a lot of them. I have plenty of layer 3 switches in my studio, which don't exist, but I have them because they're great because I can route from them and I can switch from them, but it's not switching at layer 3. So I like people to learn the fundamentals of switching. Then I like them to learn the fundamentals of routing before we ever mention the idea of a layer 3 switch, because those terms aren't compatible with each other. And that's really what I'm saying on this is you don't want to do that. And then once you understand routing and once you understand switching, then of course we can talk about what layer 3 switching, what the term is, where it came from, why we call it that, and why it's not really a thing. That's what I mean. Other questions. This is not a bad one. Jennifer says, had the worst trouble with scripts on the test. What would you suggest for someone unfamiliar with scripts who's preparing for the exam? The Security Plus exam does have a section on scripting. But you don't have to know how to script. You need to know what the differences are between those scripting technologies. You will not have to write your own scripts or troubleshoot a script that is on the screen, at least not currently. They really want you to understand, if you see a script, you recognize it. You see a script, and is that a PowerShell script? Is that a Perl script? Is it a shell script? Is it a Python script? I guess PHP isn't on there, but or Perl isn't on there. But is it a Python script? Is it a batch file? Is it a shell script? You need to be able to recognize these at sight. So that's what I would recommend, is you look at those. So hopefully that can give you some perspective of what you should know for scripting, but don't worry too much about it. There can't possibly be a ton of different questions on the exam about scripting because it's such a small part of the exam objectives. But you might get 1, you might get 2. So you at least need to be familiar with those scripts and what they look like. That's why in the video, I give you an image. You see what those scripts look like. And that's a good one to Google. Go tell ChatGPT to show you a bunch of scripts. There you go. At least having it go find things for you is reasonable most of the time. Having it explain those things to you is very different, but it can find things pretty well. But I think Google probably does a better job with that anyway, or Google and Bing, they're the ones. Go Alta Vista that one. Go ask Jeeves, and you'll be able to find everything there. Other questions. This is a pretty good one we can talk about. So what time do Discord study groups happen? Well, if we're talking about my Discord over at professormesser.com/Discord, those study groups that happen there are all done by people who are in the Discord. So they just happen at different times of the day. One will just break out not in song, but they'll break out into a breakout room and talk about Security Plus or Network Plus or A Plus, depending on the different group, or start one yourself. Go into a chat, go into a voice room, and let's talk about this topic. Let's watch one of the videos together. Let's work together on some of these topics that we have for A Plus, Network Plus, or Security Plus. People do that all the time. So that's what I would recommend too. Those study groups that happen kind of ad hoc are really fun. The study groups that I do that are listed in the events channel of my Discord are these live streams. So I do one of these live streams once a month for each one of the exams. So you can always check the events channel or check my calendar on my website to know when the next one of those is going to be. So let's do one or two more questions. And I say that because we're still trying to keep the voice going here. Other questions in here. I want to keep going. Yeah, they're pretty good. For those of you that haven't been in these study groups, I don't usually get into those. I feel like I'd be a bother inside of them. I'd be a distraction to folks that are actually trying to study. But they are a really good use of what people are doing. And I mean, some of these we've had 30 people in there all learning Security Plus at the same time, which I think is great. So you've got some options there. Another AI question. Will AI automate security/network administrators? How's it doing so far? It's not doing that, is it? No, it is not. So currently, no, it's not going to automate you. There's way too many moving parts here. There's way too many different variables involved. There's already automation we're doing. We don't need AI to do the automation we're doing today. We simply write a script. I've been doing automation in IT for 30 years. 30 years. Yeah, that's about right. Probably a little more. But we've been writing scripts, batch files, shell scripts. We've been automating with third-party automation tools forever in IT, as long as there have been computers. Because it's a computer, it can do things for us. We've set up ways to monitor and react and perform different functions automatically without us having to be there. This is nothing new. This is nothing unique. This is not something that people have suddenly realized. This has been around forever. And we do a great job with automation in our industry. We could do better. And I think if you're someone who's interested in automation or really interested in IT in general, go learn everything you can about PowerShell. Go learn everything you can about Python. And of course, you should learn about batch files and shell scripts and other things as well. But those are the two you should really start on. Go learn about Python. Go learn about PowerShell. Make sure you put those on your resume. Employers love those too. And in fact, you'll do very well in this industry the more automation you can do. I use for automation shell scripts. Because I have a lot of Linux that I use, so a lot of shell scripts. I have automation inside Windows or inside Mac OS that I use. I use a tool. Let me see what the name of this. I don't want to get the name wrong. So I use Keyboard Maestro. If you are a Mac user, Keyboard Maestro is an amazing automation tool to work inside Mac OS. If you're in Windows, PowerShell is amazing for administering Windows systems and automating things in Windows. So don't worry about AI taking your job. Worry about someone else who knows Python taking your job, because that's what's going to happen today. Make sure you are familiar with these scripting languages. They will help you so much. I used to integrate with firewall APIs using Perl libraries. Now I can do the same thing with Python libraries. I can get PowerShell to work with my Windows part of the world. tons of great things to do. My entire website is backed up to my local machines here every morning using a number of these different automation functions. And I do that because you don't know from day to day what's going to happen with your site. You don't know from day to day what's going to happen with the industry. I don't know about my web provider. They're a great web provider, but I have to plan if something was to happen to them. I don't expect something to happen to them, but you have to prepare for that. That's part of disaster recovery. That's part of disaster planning. So I make sure I have a local version of my site that is at least a day old on my computer at all times, and I can go back 30 days. I actually do that with more of a grandfather, father, son configuration. So I have 12 months of backups. I have the last 30 days of backups. Then I have others for each day of the week. So I can go back to any one of those at any time to get a copy of my website if I needed to build it on a different provider. What if a tsunami hits and takes out my web provider? Well, I need to move to a different web provider. Where am I going to get the data from? I have all of it here. I actually make multiple backups of all of those, as you can imagine. It's incredibly important. But I see the folks in the chat room must be Mac users. Said, I'll check out Keyboard Maestro. You really should. I make nothing from that, but it's really an amazing tool. If you have received an email from me for a CEU, I say in the first hour, I give you that super secret code, and then you get an email from me in about a week. That email was created automatically using Keyboard Maestro. It takes your current email, it parses what's there, it builds out a piece of the email from there, it builds out the new email, it sends it to you, and it makes sure that it sends it to you with the proper digital signature. Amazing. I've used it for the creation of my practice exams books. I have tons of scripts that help build that book out because obviously there's a lot of links and hyperlinks inside of that book. It helps me create those books. So anytime I have something I need to have done, I go to Keyboard Maestro and I get that done if it's in Mac OS. If it's on my Linux side, I build out a shell script. I build out some other type Python. I build out Perl. Whatever's available to me for that particular function is incredibly important. So although AI may someday provide some capabilities relating to network or security administration, don't wait for your AI. You can do it today. You are much smarter than an AI. That's why it's an artificial intelligence. You can build a much better script with more nuance and context than an AI could ever provide for us in the near future. So that's why it's a very valuable skill. That's why a lot of employers would like you to know those things. And if you have a set of scripts or a set of processes that you have done with PowerShell or with Python, you should make sure you mention those and show them to people when you go on an interview. They will absolutely be interested in knowing your skills associated with that. That can be very, very valuable for an employer. And it might be valuable for your own paycheck. They might see, oh, you do have some things. We'll pay you for that. We'll pay you extra for that. Great, let's do that. We'll go and make all of that happen. So I think that's a very, very, very useful, a good use of your time. Perhaps a very valuable, a financially, a monetarily valuable use of your time. We always talk about, should I be really studying this? You're sitting in a classroom and they're writing up on the board and you're wondering, am I ever going to use this? Well, when it comes to Python and PowerShell, the answer is, oh yes, you will use this. You will make money from this. You will earn more money because you have those particular skills. I can guarantee you that. Very, very useful. And there was a question. I talked about the 601 exam. Do we know when the 601 will be retired for a new exam? Keep in mind, those are two different things. The release of a new exam and the retirement of the existing exam are two completely different dates. Normally, a new exam will come out, but the old exam will not be retired for 6 months after that. So you've got an overlap period. That way, if they tomorrow, it's not tomorrow, by the way, but let's say tomorrow CompTIA comes out and says, we've just dropped the new SY0-601. It's a new Security Plus exam. But if you're still studying for the 601, we just did a study group for the 601. It's okay. You still got 6 months to take that exam. So they don't leave you just trying to figure out what you're going to do with yourself and your career. They at least give you a ramp where you can still earn your certification without losing anything. So that's very important. As far as specific dates are concerned, I have those. I keep those. I know when all of the dates are for retirements. So let's go to my nifty notes. For you Mac OS folks, I just use the notes built into Mac OS because it moves over to my iPhone. It's all about that, everything working together. The ecosystem is just remarkable, isn't it? So let's look at retirement dates. The retirement dates for Security Plus. I mentioned earlier in the study group that the release of this current version, the SY0-601, was on November the 12th of 2020. Okay, we're coming up on 3 years, right? Yes, we are. So I would estimate the retirement date for the SY0-601 to be somewhere around July of 2024. That's a little different than what I had on the slide. I said May on the slide earlier. So somewhere between May and July. May and August, somewhere in that time frame, 6 months. I'm assuming that they're going to come out with the 701 about the same time they came out with the 601 in November. So if it's November, add 6 months to that, 6 months from November. There you go. So that puts you somewhere in the May, June, July time frames. And I happen to know a little bit more about the times because I'm a CompTIA partner. I would bet probably a little bit later. That's why I wrote down July on my list. I think that's a pretty good one to go with. That's an estimated date that has not been released. We think that's pretty close to what it should be, but we don't know yet. CompTIA has not said that for sure. So I'm giving you what I would estimate the retirement to be, but it would definitely be more than a year from now on the 601. So you're good there. If you're studying right now for the 601, you got nothing to worry about. You're in great shape for the 601. So yeah, there's some important things to do. And the 701 exam objectives haven't even been released internally yet. So, you know, if you're thinking maybe you should wait, the answer is, oh no, you should not. You have a year and a half before this exam ever goes away, probably a little more. So don't wait. Never wait to get certified. Get that certification and put it in your pocket and show it to employers and make the money now. Never wait for a new version of an exam. It's a waste of time to wait. You're losing out every second you're waiting. In the meantime, people who have taken the exam and they've earned the certification, they've already got the job. In the meantime, you're sitting there waiting. So never wait. It's just a bad idea. Now, once you get to July or the July time frame, the May time frame, go back and look at the retirement dates. You certainly don't want to study for an exam that retires next week. So there will be a time in the future where I will tell people, you should probably start migrating over to the new version if you haven't finished up the 601. Usually that waits until the final month or so, because if you've been studying for the 601, don't restart that process. Don't lose all that time you've put into studying. So make sure you spend the time to really know what the 601 happens to be, and get it done. Get it finished. Some folks have been asking about that and the 601 and vouchers. And I will tell you the vouchers that you get for these certifications are not specific to a particular version of the certification. So unless the voucher itself tells you it is, and in the vast number of cases, it does not. An A+ voucher works for any A+. Network Plus voucher works for any Network Plus. Security Plus voucher works for any Security Plus. When you buy a voucher, they're really only good for about a year. The ones that you get from CompTIA, the ones you get from my website are good for about a year. So you have to use it in that year. You have to schedule your exam and take your exam sometime in that 12-month time frame. But the exam itself is one you just have to get through, and you can use whatever certification you've been working on to make that happen. Along those same lines, how about employers? Will they ask you for a specific version of the Security Plus certification? Fortunately, there is no versioning of the certification. There are versions of the exam. That's different. The exams have versions. Once you get Security Plus certified, there is no version of that. You're just Security Plus certified. So if you took your Security Plus certification at the SY0-301 10 years ago, and you have simply renewed that certification every 3 years, you are today Security Plus certified. You're not Security Plus 301 certified. You are Security Plus certified because the certification doesn't have a version. So once you get the cert, then you're just Security Plus. You're good to go. There's no specific version of the cert that you would have to deal with or worry about. The only thing that has a version is the exam, and the important part there is that you study from materials that match the version of the exam that you're planning to take. So, for instance, if you look at your book, it's an SY0-601. If you go to my website and look at the videos are made for SY0-601. But I've been making Security Plus videos for a long time. And if you go back to my YouTube channel, you'll find my 501 course, my 401 course, my 301 course. You could go back many years and watch those old courses. Don't do that. That material is outdated. Most of it is not on the exam anymore. Half of it is not on the 501, is not on the 601, and vice versa. So make sure you're always studying from materials that match the version of the exam that you're planning to take. But once you pass that exam, no more versions. It's just Security Plus, which makes it so much easier. That's why. I think that's why people are worried about versions until they get certified. Then suddenly you don't have to worry about it anymore. You're in good shape. That's the way I think you should focus on it anyway. And if you ever are in a case where you're just not sure, just make sure, check your exam materials, your training materials, make sure they match that exam version. I think you're fine. And if you ever get into, especially trying to find ways to study more or better or faster, just check the version of the materials that you're using. If your training materials don't have a version, that's a problem. And perhaps even worse, if you go back and look at study materials that have SY0-601 on them, but they're teaching you concepts that were dropped from the 601 that were in the 501, that's an even worse case. And that's why I mentioned earlier that I always find there are practice exams you find on the internet that say they're for the latest exam version, but a lot of the topics are from the previous version that are no longer in the 601. So those are problematic as well. You don't want to run into that situation. That's just sort of poor content creation from the person who put those out. They didn't do a very good job of vetting that when they went through, and they left in a lot of old material. Some people interpret that as their questions are harder. Well, they certainly are. They also don't apply. They're also not good for you. Whenever people say their questions were so much harder, what I hear in my mind is their questions didn't apply to the latest version of the exam. And that's pretty much what I find every single time. And people will send me questions about topics that were covered in exams 2 versions ago. And I'll say, where did you get that from? Oh, it's from this latest set of questions. I'm like, don't worry about that topic. It's not in the exam objectives. Stick to the exam objectives. That's the important part. As long as you stick to the exam objectives, you're fine. I think that's what you should focus on. I mentioned earlier how long it takes to make one of these videos. And so let's place this. What? So a 10-minute video takes you a day to make it. Ultimately, maybe a little bit less than a day, but let's do the numbers. So if I was to create a single 10-minute Security Plus video, and let's say we're building it from scratch. This is something I haven't created one before. It's a new topic or a new set of topics. It takes about half a day to a day to build out that single 10-minute video set of slides and or demonstrations. So yeah, it takes about half a day to a day just on that part. That most of the work, most of the time-consuming work in creating a course is the content that you build prior to ever turning on the camera. So it takes a long time because I have to first, how am I going to format it? What topics are we going to cover in these 10 minutes? Is it going over too far? Is it a 20-minute video now? Do I need to parse it out? And then when we go from topic to topic, am I presenting that information in a way that makes sense? Is it content that's accurate? Am I giving you the right information? So I often double and triple check from other sources to make sure what I already know in the industry, is that really the right thing? I don't want to second guess myself. So therefore, let's confirm with other sources that what I'm telling you is the right thing. So I make sure I do the proper QA for that. And then once we get through that part, all of that information, I can then sit down in front of the camera. Finally, I can sit in front of the camera. A 10-minute video usually takes 30 minutes to shoot. So it takes about three times as long. So we shoot the video. That took about 30 minutes, 40 minutes sometimes, 40, 60 minutes sometimes. If it's a demonstration where I'm typing things in, it takes even longer because there's more moving parts there. But generally, a 10-minute video takes about 30 minutes to shoot. Now we have to edit. So that 10-minute video, that 30 minutes of content that I've now got in the can, I can bring up in my video editor, and it takes about 15 to 20 minutes to edit, assuming everything went okay. If I say something wrong, which sometimes happens when you're recording, there's so much in this room going on. You know, there's lights and I'm reading and I'm talking and there's not a script. But even if there was, sometimes you say the wrong thing. You know, you're thinking ahead to the next bullet and then you say the wrong thing. And so I will see that in the edit because I watch every minute, every second of the video during the edit. And I'm right there. I say the wrong thing. I'm like, oh, I was supposed to say, well, let's take firewalls. I was supposed to say an inherent policy, and now what I meant was something different. Okay, well, I need to now take that and do an overdub so that, because you see me on the screen, and you'll never see it. It goes by so fast that I add in other audio. We fix it in post. I add in other audio there with same mic and same setup, so it's not obvious that I'm doing that. And then we just keep going. So sometimes that takes a little more time, but on average about 20 to 30 minutes to edit that 10-minute video. So we're up to about a day's worth of work for a 10-minute video, but that's occurred over a number of months. It takes months to create a single course. And so finally, once that video is done, I have to grab graphics from the front screen. I need to build out the description page. I need to post it to the website. I need to upload it to YouTube. I need to add all the things YouTube wants to have inside of it. I need to create a before and after screen. There's all these little management things that go on with that. And then finally, it's posted and available to you. So there you go. And so you'll see them, they come out in chunks. I usually will shoot 10 or so at a time, then edit those 10, then post those 10, and then do another 10 or so, depending on what's going on in my life. But it does take time. It's very time consuming. I think that's one of the reasons you don't see a ton of courses like this on YouTube because of that. It takes a lot to produce these. And I think a lot of people, they want to get, there's a cost benefit to this, and there's obviously an entrepreneurial aspect to this. I need to pay for the lights. I need to pay for dinner. I need to make sure that everyone is clothed and housed. So there is a financial aspect to it. What's the best way to approach that? Some people do it different ways. There's different business models depending on what you're trying to do. It's just but it's all time consuming. Regardless of what the business model is, the creation of the course is very time consuming, and it has to be able to have that there. So whether that's good or not, whether it's the right way to do it or not, I don't know. I don't have a right or wrong way to do it. I have my way to do it, and it's worked so fine so far. So that's what we're trying to do, making all of those things happen. A good point regarding the notifications. I think Let's Play said earlier, I saw it go by that you just got, we're 2.5 hours in, you just got the notification that I was going live on YouTube. That does happen sometimes. YouTube, can you imagine the number of notifications YouTube must have to send out every day, every minute? So of course, some of that is going to be an issue. And so your view here is correct. I have everything tied to a Google Calendar, and these days, almost any calendar can pull that data off and associate it with your current calendar or sync it up that way. So I do have everything in Google Calendar, and it's a public calendar, and you're able to share or pull from that calendar and integrate it into other calendars you may be using. So I use Apple Calendar on my front end. I use Google Calendar. That's pretty much all the calendars I use. And obviously those all integrate together and will go to my iPhone and other devices that I use. So anything I change in one calendar, of course, will update everywhere else. And that might be an easy way to do it for you as well. If you're somebody who wants notifications, the Google Calendar is a great way to do it. It's just a simple way for me to do it. And then when I make a change there, it automatically updates for everybody who's subscribed to that calendar. It makes it simple because things do change. I will tell you something in a live stream today that we're doing this in March, a month from now, and then I have to go out of town or something happens in my world that changes the day, or we have a network outage or whatever it happens to be, and then we'll need to change the date. And then I'll move it in the calendar and then it'll update on your side, and then you'll know when the next one happens to be when that goes through. So I think that's a good way to do it. So hopefully add me to your calendar, get that on the list, make sure that all of those things are there, and then you'll have no problem knowing the next time we go live. This is another good one from Ali, who says, can I get a discount for a Security Plus voucher by being in an Asian country? As you may have noticed on that slide that I talked about on my site for the discounted vouchers, they're only available in the US, Canada, and a number of US territories. Unfortunately, I don't have a way to provide those to other countries today. Most of that is just a financial problem with making them available in that local currency. We're all struggling with fiat. If we did everything by cryptocurrency, we'd be fine, but we don't. So we still have to deal with the limitations and costs associated with covering that in different currencies around the world. So can you imagine the number of currencies you'd have to deal with to have all of these countries in place? Well, that's why. So I don't currently offer, on my side, I do not offer discounted vouchers for any other countries other than US, Canada, and a number of US territories. The problem, though, is if you ever get into and deal with trying to get vouchers in those countries, the only place I can really tell you that I know you can get the vouchers from the CompTIA store. That's obviously at full price. There may be a partner, a CompTIA partner in your country who does offer them with a discount. You may want to look into that. That's the only thing I can kind of offer because CompTIA partners do get a bit of a discount on the vouchers. So that might be something to look at. I don't know if that's something that might help you, but maybe it's something you can at least send an email to some of the training companies and other CompTIA partners. And CompTIA does have a list of partners on their website. And so in that list, maybe you recognize one of those that's in your country, and that's something that can help you too, because it's always good to get a couple bucks off of that voucher. It can help quite a bit. These vouchers are expensive, and you get 10% discount. That's a pretty big discount off of a $350 voucher. So that's my perspective anyway. And I would agree that purchasing a voucher from a third party is problematic for many reasons. But so just make sure you know who is providing that voucher and that it is a legitimate voucher. There's no way to test it until you book your exam. That's not the time that you need to know. That's just a way to do it. So there are ways to, in fact, the chat room is great. You're giving me some ideas and thoughts. What about this? What about that? What if you had PayPal or Stripe or whoever's doing your credit card transactions? What if they could do the transition from one currency to another? And indeed, they do offer that kind of thing. There is a cost associated with that transition, that conversion between different fiats. Unfortunately, the problem is that now I have to make sure I have vouchers available for that specific area of the world. A voucher in the UK is different than a voucher in the US, is different than a voucher in Australia. So finding and making sure inventory for those vouchers now becomes problematic, on top of making sure the numbers and the conversions of the currency make sense. By the time I finish all of that, is there even any profit in doing something like that? And ultimately, that's what I have to look at. I don't want to lose money every time someone buys a voucher from Australia just because they're buying it from Australia. And indeed, that kind of protects the CompTIA partners who are in your geography. It protects the partners that are in the U.S. versus the partners that are in Australia too. So there's some good reasons to keep them separated. Could I do it? Yes, but right now I haven't found a good way to do it based on some of the limitations I have here. So maybe we'll figure it out eventually. We'll know ultimately if it's one that does make sense. So I don't have a good answer for that right now, unfortunately. We'll figure it out, or we won't. Right now, the figuring it out part is I just don't currently offer that. But I'm always looking at different ideas, they're developing different ways to do this. There's been a big push to kind of make it easier with the advent of cryptocurrency and the popularity of cryptocurrency. That has cooled a bit most recently because when the market went down, so did the use of cryptocurrencies. But the value of cryptocurrencies still exists. That value is still very useful, where anybody can buy anything from anywhere in the world, and you don't have to worry about the fiat. You don't have to worry about conversion rates. You don't have to worry about a third party charging you just to take money from someone who happens to be in a different country. There are challenges, though, financially. There are challenges legally when you pull in money from a foreign entity. Governments are very interested in that, and so there's challenges on those pieces of it. So it's a little bit of a game we have to play with all of the different players, but eventually we're going to find a way to do that. I feel solid I will. It's just something that's going to take some time. And it may not be something I can do very quickly, unfortunately. So today, U.S. and Canada. Otherwise, you have to go to your local CompTIA store, which you go to store.comptia.com, pick your country, or you find a partner who is local in your country who might offer those vouchers for a discount. Well, I think that's a pretty good place to kind of finish things off. We had an amazing first hour. You guys did great with the questions today. We had some nice Q&A, fantastic Q&A in the second part of this. I think that you're on the right path. I think if you're planning to do Security Plus, you've got the right things in mind. You're working towards what those final goals are, and it's a great certification to have. We're doing another one of these Security Plus study groups next month. Check the calendar to find out when the next live stream is going to be at professormesser.com/calendar, or check the events in our Discord, and that's where I'm going to be when we're done here, and everybody else should come on over there. Get your Discord login. Make sure that you're able to chat with the people there. Keep that process going. You can find all of that at professormesser.com/discord. And of course, all of our course notes, practice exams, and other things are on the website at professormesser.com. We'll do another one of these next week. Hope to see you there. Thanks for joining us this time. We'll see you next time on the Security Plus Study Group. Thanks, everybody.